Well, I guess for me, it's very different than I remember it even a few years ago. It's changed quite a bit, and it seems like there's, uh, the housing prices have gone up considerably. There's a lot more people, and it feels like the infrastructure isn't quite keeping up with the amount of people that are moving here.
Yeah.
We had a population increase of like 100,000 over the past 7 years in the Denver area alone. So yeah, we're getting big, but this is going to be relatively unpopular, but Colorado got this way by doing what was good for business. People might have a problem with legalizing dope. I think it's a personal choice about whether or not you think it's worth your time. But we made a fortune off of this stuff, and I can't see a single thing that makes it worse than booze.
Now I think it definitely exploded our economy. Like, it's insane, and how many people moved here. But it kind of feels like we're playing catch up, like with all of the traffic, all of the construction that's going on. It kind of feels like now we're rushing to fix the fact that we don't have the right roads and the right buildings and the right housing for all of these people. It's like we weren't ready for it.
Well, I think one of the big problems with what's happening is with all the money, as you mentioned, I mean, it's been a windfall for the state. And the problem is that you can't put money like that into a bank, because it's considered illegal on the federal level, so no bank will take deposit. So what ends up happening is you have to put that money into something, you have to have an investment, and so real estate is what a lot of people look towards. And so you see, I mean, I've had multiple friends try to buy a house and they've gotten beaten out by all cash above asking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it also can be an opportunity for the city to do things right, since they have had the opportunity of observing other cities go through major growth right now. As they play this game of catch up to accommodate for the influx of population, they can do things right, and they can invest into the right systems for transportation in order to avoid investing too much in roads and in highways and freeways that end up being just congested, like we see in cities like Los Angeles and New York and many other places. So I mean, we have we don't run out of examples to show how you can do it wrong. And so I think it's definitely an opportunity for the people of Colorado to really figure out the most efficient way to move people around, because that's one of the biggest problems, other than housing. One of the biggest problems with the larger population is how do you move them from one side to the other side of the city. So.
We're a winning candidate for Elon Musk's Hyperlink, which is going to be cool. But
really?
Yeah, we totally are.
From like Cheyenne to
That's
Boulder
awesome.
in 39 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, and then Denver to Vail is the other one, and
Wow.
it's like supposed to be, and it's crazy. So that's, I think it's like 2022 or something.
And I think they need more projects like that. Looking at what happened with the US 36, where they sold off the rights, they privatized the part of the highway and then charge you for using the HOV lane. It seems that money's leaving the country immediately. It's going to I think it's an Australian company, and it's hard to believe.
Wait, what is?
So all of the revenue, the 36 basically, they
Like express toll?
yeah. So that part on 36, it's all private owned. So that money
What?
all goes to I believe it's an Australian company.
Really short-sighted. It's
I
kind of
can't
like
believe
Chicago.
that.
If you're like putting a quarter in a parking meter, you'd think that quarter goes to the city of Chicago, but in a desperate, strapped for cash moment, they sold the rights to that to Japanese companies. Every time you put a dollar or a quarter in a parking meter in Chicago, it goes straight to Japan.
What?
Yeah.
And that's one of my greatest concerns.
No idea.
It's ridiculous.
Is the privatization of Denver, and especially when banks aren't able to step up and really help out, other people end up coming in, and it tends to be private money, and private money tends to make demands that are sometimes detrimental to the people within that area.
Yeah.
But it's important now to get people excited about it, to probably pass out the information, to have the conversation, so that people really are looking for candidates, you know, in the local elections that will push forward for 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 the
Yeah.
best interest of the city, that will be excited for implementing new technologies and new companies from the United States that will help the United States and will help the city of Denver.
I think
Yeah.
Denver is a city undergoing an identity crisis just because of how much it's changed in the past decade. And I think it's in a position, it's kind of that small town, big town, small city on the cusp of becoming a big city. And depending how they maneuver this influx of people coming here, they could position themselves to be the greatest city in this country.
I think we
There's-
already are.
I've been you know what? I've been all over this country and it's my favorite.
Yeah,
I don't want to
mine
leave
too.
anytime soon. But I've been spoiled coming from the Midwest where we have really great public transportation and things like that, and that I kind of take for granted, and some things that feel a little more commonplace in other cities that is still kind of a blossoming idea. But I think that it's just interesting because, you know, there's a lot of locals who are upset about young people moving into Cap Hill, and all of a sudden what was an $800 studio apartment is now a $1,300 studio apartment.
Gentrification.
It's-
just gonna say
right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
especially
something-
like Five Points area is another one that had
All of a
extreme
sudden.
gentrification over the
Yeah.
last
Oh yeah.
5
But
to 10
that's-
years.
That's what brings us to our identity crisis. It's like, how do we take care of the people that were there but still allow for progress? And, you know, we want everyone to know how great Colorado is. You can't be upset when people start to realize that and move here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's my favorite state of the 40 I've been to, and it's got something for everybody. It's, you know, you get outside the city of Denver and it's completely different sort of mindset with people, and it's so funny how close they could be together but just two completely separate bubbles.
Yeah.
That's what I think a lot of people love about Denver, and I know that's one of my favorite things is if you want more of a city vibe, you have that access to central Denver, but you can go 30 minutes, an hour west, you're in the mountains, you have all the ski resorts, hiking, snowboarding, and of course all of the activity here also, you know, draws in tourists on top of the legalization of marijuana. So I mean, there's just you know, all of those compounding components drawing people to Colorado right now, but I think it's because it has, you know, all of those options, and it's not, you know, you get 4 seasons, you get, you know, mountains, you get the city. There's something I think for most demographics.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I find it a little interesting that you seem to support public transportation as a libertarian.
I mean, I'm a student at DU and I have free access to RTD, and I think it's, you know, my way of my guilt of being from out of state and coming here. Well, at least I'm not adding to the traffic. You know, I'm very lucky that there's a bus that stops at my girlfriend's house, my school, my office. You know, it worked out in my favor too. It could be better. I got very lucky with the one, but like getting from one side of town to the other is a lot more of a struggle.
Why wouldn't a libertarian want public transportation?
Well, individual freedom and not wanting to pay for something else, something that's a
Individual
group.
freedom and taxes aren't necessarily interdependent.
I would say that they
Each
are
other.
completely related to public transportation.
So you think there's no libertarians at all who believe in?
I don't think there is any libertarian position that supports a public transportation system. No.
Aren't you boxing them in though into an idea of what they're supposed to be?
Parties do that to themselves.
That's fair.
One thing that's always been interesting about Colorado as a demographic, when I was growing up, we were light red. I mean, you might, well, don't call us pink. But gradually, as more and more people moved here, we started moving a little closer toward the center. Gradually, No, not gradually, rapidly toward the center. And something that happened in Colorado in particular is we would elect governors who are Democrats or Republicans. We would elect senators who are Democrats or Republicans. We actually go back and forth. But those people are still expected to reach across the aisle here.
Yeah,
That's a very positive thing.
You're
That's-
expected to listen.
I think
And that
Yeah.
is
that's
not
critical.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the culture of Colorado, though.
You know, I don't agree with Hickenlooper on a wide variety of issues, but I still sleep well knowing that he's not the worst case scenario just because he's the other party. He knows he has to play to both sides in order to get elected or stay elected.
The
Well, I
one thing
think
about
it's-
Colorado though is it's so white. It's so
I would
white.
agree with that.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
it's that's changing. I mean, from the 1940s, it went from a population of 97% white to now we have, the last census was, 68% white, and non-Hispanic white was like 54%. So
The
it's a
problem is,
big
though, where
change
I
and
live-
nowadays.
Where I live in like a suburbia type area, it's white.
Well,
And
that,
then the only time I actually see color is in very, very poor areas that are being gentrified.
but I mean, travel the country and you'll tend to have a correlation between rural life and whiteness. There tends to be a much stronger correlation, I mean, towards white populations in rural areas. And so the more, and I think it kind of plays to how demographics shift as places become more urban. Because urban centers, if you look at urban centers across this country, the majority of them are more liberal. And I think a part of that is that
And that's one of the reasons there's this identity crisis I keep talking about. As Denver's population skyrockets, it's able to carry elections. It doesn't matter what the rest of the state thinks. I think Denver, 75 went for Clinton, 25 for Trump roughly. There was the margin for the independents, but like it's changed it from the swing state to kind of a darker shade of blue.
There's
And that's consistent with what you're saying about urban populations and how they tend to lean more left.
yeah,
There's
and
more-
the growth in general, it has been, much more focused in the urban areas as opposed to growth in the rural areas.
There's more
That's
people of color in there's more people of color in Denver though, and like Aurora.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's like
Denver.
Aurora though, for me, to be honest with you, maybe it's just the road that I took or take, but it's so like desolate.
Well, okay, so Aurora is a very Aurora is
Am
a
I wrong?
very
Right? Or-
yeah, I'm saying it's
Okay.
Aurora is a huge city.
Okay.
So Aurora isn't like this. Aurora is like
Yeah.
this.
Okay.
So you've got like there's like Southlands Aurora, Centennial Aurora that's very very rich,
Okay.
and then there's like that's where the Broncos live.
A bunch of Cherry Creek
Centennial.
is, well,
Yeah, a lot of
technically.
Cherry Creek is. I mean,
Yeah.
Centennial is kind of Aurora.
Mhm.
But then there's like a more Denver Aurora that Colfax, like.
Colfax area is
Yeah.
not the kind of place where I would want to go walking. At
Yeah,
night.
there's old Aurora.
Wait, why is that?
I was told not to.
It's
Yeah.
That's kind of
And
like
why?
that's
I'm
like
curious.
a state joke. Colfax
I
is.
mean, I'm not them. I
Not
didn't
just the
say
state
it, but they had told me it was probably because a lot of bad things happen there. Cops are often called.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Is that okay that I said
No,
that?
no, it's okay. I was just curious.
But
I feel
there's.
like yeah.
I think it gets a bad
You
rep
don't wanna brush that
compared
up.
to other neighborhoods in this country. Different
Well,
cities.
yeah,
Well,
we don't
Colfax
have-
is also the longest individual road in the country.
Exactly.
So saying Colfax as a neighborhood is kind of reductive.
Well-
it's
Yeah.
different on one end than the other.
Mhm. Goes
Yeah.
a long way.
Well, and the homeless population in Denver is crazy to me. But what's so amazing about it is they seem like they're either we are completely accepting of the homeless population, or we just pretend like they're not even there, one or the other. But they seem to have like that the homeless people here seem happier than homeless people in other areas. I don't know why. Is that weird that I would notice something like that?
I don't think it's
People-
weird.
I don't
noticed
know.
that too, oddly enough.
I don't
Right?
know.
Yeah.
Well, it makes you wonder how many
I
are
don't know. I
homeless,
don't really talk to them.
homeless because of situation and how many are homeless because of choice.
Because they want to be. Maybe those kinds of people are attracted to Denver.
We have a lot of like transient
Hmm.
traveler homeless people out here too.
Hippies.
Interesting.
We have a lot of people that packed their life in a backpack and come hang out. Not a ton, but we do have some.
You get that all
It's
over
okay, they don't
Colorado
go.
too. I
Yeah.
go up to the springs with a few friends, and there's a dude who's living out of his trailer there, just bathing in one of the hot springs
Yeah.
too. You know, giving you his life story.
That sounds really fun.
Hey, it takes different strokes if that's what you want to do.
I don't know. Like, I think color and like people of color in Colorado, I don't know. It may be very white in areas. That's completely true. Like Brighton, I call whiten because it's like it's. But I mean, there's also just a different air about Colorado. Like the culture is just different. Like going from like Georgia or Tennessee or something like that and feeling that weight of racial situations on you, and then coming to Colorado, it's totally different.
And you feel that way?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's very amazing. All the new things I'm finding out about this beautiful city. But I would love to hear from you to summarize what you got from this lovely conversation here.
I think that we all seem like we kind of agree on how Denver is. I think it's a good city. It's very purple, and maybe that's why we found balance. So I don't really have anything to say, unfortunately. That would, I don't know. Does anybody,
What brings that balance to you?
what brings the balance to me? What did they say?
Well, I mean, you're saying it's a purple state. But
Yeah.
What creates that sense of unity, that sense of balance?
Well, coincidentally enough, it's really close to the center of the United States, and South Carolina is way too right, and Oregon is way too left, geographically
Oh,
speaking
wow.
as well.
I would have never noticed that.
And I actually moved here because it was purple, amongst other reasons. And I wish there was more people of different races here. I think the city is too big. I am an implant, so I am partially to blame for that. But I think it is one thing that we can all agree on. I think that Denver is genuinely a good city.
Good, good. I'd love to hear that. All right. You know, I look at it because I visited back in the, I won't say, in the late 80s, and it seemed as a town that was quite sparse with people, and some even considered it as a cow town. But you see it growing into a metropolis that is just mind-blowing, I guess, is how you would say it. And you foresee it expanding even larger than it is, and because they had the foresight to take what little airport they had and put it way off in the distance, and everybody thought they were crazy. They thought, oh my gosh, nobody's ever going to want to go that far.
The Denver airport out there in Nebraska. Yeah.
Yes. But have you seen the encroachment of all the residential homes coming into
Oh,
that
yeah.
area as well now?
It's not so far out
It's
anymore.
everywhere. There's not going to be a border between Boulder and Denver within like the next decade.
Well, I would say at this point, you go down the 36 corridor, there's no real, there's a few tiny little breaks but most of those have been filled in with apartment
Yeah.
buildings, and that whole stretch, it's pretty incredible how much that has filled in through the middle.
Yeah.
I think, to me, I would say that whole area is filled in right now. If you look at 470, when they
Yeah.
first built that was the same thing. It was in the middle of nowhere trying to get to the airport, and all around it has been built up.
Yeah,
Do
no, they're
you
building the
foresee?
Gaylord out
Do you foresee Fort Collins to Colorado Springs becoming one gigantic line of residential homes?
Oh goodness.
I think
foresee
for the
that.
most
That's
part.
so silly.
Difficult.
Not between South Denver and the Springs.
Yeah.
I think it's but with how mountainous that is, and with the amount of owned land out there, that farmland, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of trails out there that people really enjoy, the reservations and the just being able to go out and bike and hike, and I don't see, particularly between Castle Rock and Monument, filling in, but between Fort Collins and Greeley, or Greeley and Denver, I could see getting filled in.
Yeah, and I would agree with her. I think a lot of that plays into the geography.
Yes, Mr. H.
Yes.
What are your conclusions from all of this?
Well, a room full of intelligent people can occasionally agree on something, even if it's we just like a city. Getting bigger isn't bad,
progress is good, and we all want to make sure we keep moving in the right direction.
Elaborate.
I mean, certain people talked about gentrification, but at the end of the day, state and the city needs to look different than it does. We don't have room for people. We are actually in the middle of a housing crisis where rents are exorbitantly expensive, so it's cheaper to get a mortgage, but at the same time, you're always going to get outbid for a house.
But can you compare the old Denver to the new Denver? Can you compare the old 5 Points to the new 5 Points?
The old Denver is long gone. Colorado Springs is pretty similar to what it was, but Denver has changed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's not saying that the old bones aren't there in some capacity or another, but I couldn't imagine when I was growing up here us being the state that legalized pot. I couldn't imagine a million things we've done. So the idea that I could predict where we're going,
How does it make you feel right now with the legalization of marijuana into this state?
we make money.
So it's all about money to you.
We legalized alcohol. Now, people are gonna do what they're gonna do. Pot isn't as harmful as alcohol.
This is
and-
by experience, yes.
There's been studies.
Well, it's by research as well. There's
Well,
been
and-
extensive.
Beyond that, okay, I mean, I really, really hate how much my opinion has changed on this. It always makes me feel kind of embarrassed. But the fact of the matter is, we've got an opiate crisis nationwide. It's hitting us less hard in Denver because we legalized pot.
Okay, so how do you compare the rest of your students and colleagues in this class on how they affect your opinion of Denver?
He holds my opinion in high regard. I know that.
There's that. It's always interesting trying to find a middle ground with people you disagree with.
But do you think their backgrounds that they brought into the state have anything to do with this opinion of yours?
Yeah, no. I mean, different people are always going to change you.
How so?
Politics is a people business. It is about affecting people. It's about affecting change. It's about taking ownership of what you believe in. And in order to do that in politics, you actually have to get people to listen to you. And
Do me this. Take each individual in this class.
Mhm.
Break down their background for me and why you think maybe they came to this state. What you think their influence of the state has in your opinion.
It seems like we've got a bunch of transplants here for education.
But each individual is what I'm asking for.
Okay. Military vet moved here for some semblance of moderation. I don't know. Move here for education? No. Oh, did you move here for him?
No help.
No,
This is
I would-
your opinion, sir. Please, we're open to debate. Don't be
Okay.
afraid to let me know how you feel with your political beliefs, with your social beliefs, with your religious beliefs, what you feel each individual has to offer in bringing their influence into this state.
If nothing else, they will make my arguments better.
Okay, we'll take each individual and make that argument.
Well, my
We have the military.
semi-libertarian friend and my military friend here and I actually share a bunch of common ground. The people I don't share common ground with, Okay, crazy Canadian. Thanks for coming and spending money in our country.
You know, just so you know, my mother, I'm a dual citizen, so I'm actually American.
This side, man, come on.
I find it quite odd that you just jumped a speed bump to Canada.
Oh Lord.
Alright, fine. I'm not particularly fond of the fact that it seems to be the general consensus of everybody in the room that I have responsibility for other people's happiness. I'm sorry. I work hard, and I make a point of not telling other people everything they should do. On occasion, I do get up on my high horse, but I'm not mean to anybody. I can tell you that when you frame an issue as just marginalizing a group of people, when you don't see the advantages it brings to everybody else, I think that's myopic. I think that's closed-minded, and I think it's dumb.
Are you relating that to gentrification, or what are you saying?
Yeah, I'm confused too.
So how does Miss Coleman affect you? How does Mr. Delgado affect you? Because you speed bumped right over them.
Mr. Delgado is considerate, smart, and it doesn't seem like he actually knows everything that he thinks. He's changing his mind, and Miss Coleman doesn't necessarily think before she talks.
I'm over here hella
About being
thinking.
nice to people? Let's rewind
I am
back to
over
that,
here
'cause,
hella
oh, man.
thinking.
He's being honest, and that is what we need in this class, is that honesty.
There's a difference, okay, faith that I don't subscribe to. The Muslim faith has a tenet that before you say anything, you have to discuss whether it's truthful, it's constructive, and is it kind. And you have to answer yes to all of those questions before you can say a damn word to anybody. When I tell you that I don't think you necessarily think everything through before you say it, it's truthful.
Okay.
I am actually seeking a constructive resolution. And the fact that I have told you something that might be harmful to your interactions with other people is kind.
Very good. Very
You
good.
spun that very well. I think it's funny that you picked me to talk about the Muslim religion with, knowing that I came from the Muslim religion.
Okay, understandable.
We can stop.
We're not going down that road just yet.
That was quick.
Young man, could you go ahead and give a lovely, lovely synopsis of what you just heard from Mr.
Well,
H?
it's pretty consistent with a lot of what I've heard natives say about attitudes about people moving out of here. It's actually a little bit more positive than some just, you're a transplant. It's like, why are you here? He's at least appreciative that we're building Colorado's economy, so that's rather refreshing, being from Madison, Wisconsin, and not just being immediately written off for it. In regards to each individual, he was commenting on, I think he was fairly reflective of how I feel about the people in this room as well.
Really?
I think everyone in this room is really well intentioned, and that they think that they're trying to in a positive direction. I don't think anyone's a villain twirling their mustaches and kicking the dog, but I think that there's a certain level of short-sightedness and a little bit of a kind of a self-righteousness that blinds people when they make arguments about policy sometimes in this room. And I'd have to agree. I think that everyone in this room, we're all pursuing our PhD or higher education of some form. We have to have some level of intelligence to be here. I think that I'm also guilty of this on a few things, but I think that we're also convinced we're right about things even when there's some more research to be done.
Okay. But let me ask you this. Very well said. And of course, you can jump in at any time, Ms. Baker. Now, I need to know physically, in your soul, in your gut, in your mindset, how do you think President Trump has influenced Denver in the last year and a half, good or bad? I need for you to talk amongst yourselves and give your opinions from the heart.
He's done a terrific job of mobilizing people that agree with me, that disagree with me, that there's kind of more of a gray area in between, but he has for better or for worse, been very effective at mobilizing people.
I always thought maybe it was because I'm just white, but I haven't had anything different in my life change since
I
Trump
was
became
literally
president.
going to say the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've just seen I've seen a lot more hatred and
Oh, yeah,
a
that's
lot less acceptance of people, and I mean even to myself.
But those
I've
are all
gotten-
ideas, though.
But I've gotten a lot more accounts of the N word. Like,
Really?
yeah, definitely,
Well, yeah, same thing,
100%.
Anti-Semitic stuff. I've seen
Here in Denver?
swastikas.
Yes, here in
I've
Denver.
saw
Here, and
swastikas.
people use those words all the time at my
No,
high
honey.
school and my middle school.
I mean, you can say that, right?
It's true.
You can
I grew
say
up
that.
in Aurora.
You can say that as a white man. I also grew up in Aurora. You can say that as a white man, but you might have heard it, but it's different when it's coming at you. It's much different, and it has definitely happened more often since Trump has been president.
In what kind of environment does that happen to you?
In a work environment,
At work, they do that?
yeah, like I've gotten receipts with the word on it. Most definitely.
Are you kidding me?
Swear.
Oh my god. If that happened to me, I would lose my shit.
Well, and it's kind of like if you're faced with it, you kind of have to deal with it
No,
and
no.
whatever. I
I
know.
would
You
be
would
so
think
mad.
you would think right, but
Oh.
if it happens to you,
Yeah, but that only makes if she were to act out in that situation, that wouldn't help her cause.
But there's ways to act out that are beneficial.
well, when you have a situation like, okay, what you tell your employer, what if they don't care? What if nothing happens then?
Would you just get a new job?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like,
Or move?
yeah, I mean, but you can't keep uprooting your life and changing your life because there's racists around you.
I'm so glad that you brought that up because in the South, and I want to reiterate that I don't think the South is entirely full of hate, and I
No.
think we all know that. But there are definitely more hatred there than other places. And I always wondered, why don't they just move?
Right.
You
a
know
lot
what
of
I
people
mean?
that's a very privileged point of view.
Well, and I
think
understand
that's
that, which
easier
is
said
why,
than done.
to me, I feel like, for me, I would just move, right? Because I move a lot.
Yeah.
I'm used to moving. It's all I do. But for other people, that's their home, so they have to.
It's almost like defeat, though.
You have to pick your battles.
So what do you do? Because it seems like, what if it's been so long and it's actually getting worse? You know. So
Still,
what do
it's
people
like
do?
defeat. It's like
You-
saying,
you-
okay, you
you-
win, I'll get out of here.
You circle the wagons, That's why you see a lot of times it's very segregated communities.
And it
Well,
it
people
depends.
seek their like. That has nothing to do with what other
Do you
people
think
But
it's
why-
racist?
I don't-
Because
but
I
why
read
do
an article
people
this
seek
morning,
the-
actually, coincidentally enough, that was really shaming white people, because well,
It's a
you
trend.
don't make your kid go to this school full of colored people, so that makes you racist. Well, is it? Because what if is it what you just said? And I'm not saying I believe one way or another. I'm just putting it on the table. What if it's what you just said? People are more comfortable with their people, with who they're like,
I
and
think
cultural similarities.
that comes down to ignorance. I think that comes down to people that haven't been around other cultures and experienced other cultures. I feel
Fear.
just as comfortable surrounded by a group of people that don't even speak English as well as I consider myself pretty colorblind in that way.
Have you
I
been a
grew up-
minority before?
Oh, I've been the minority in many
When were you
situations.
the minority?
So I lived in Thailand. I fought Muay Thai in Thailand, and I was the only white person in the entire building.
I think being a
like
minority
how you
in
had to
Thailand
mention
is a
that
lot
I
different than being a
thought.
minority in America.
Uh,
I think in
Mr.
Thailand they
H,
probably look at you like
Mr.
a
Marker,
rockstar.
I find your silence troubling.
Uh,
Because, clearly you have an opinion.
I was waiting for my turn.
Well,
Oh.
it's never stopped you before.
Cute. All right, hold on. Give me the thread now that apparently I'm in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Okay, so I grew up in a section of Aurora that was lovingly referred to by its own residents as Saudi Aurora.
Saudi Aurora.
I didn't do anything to make those people cloister. I didn't actively seek to shepherd them into a neighborhood, and I don't know anybody else who did the same. But when my friend Bahman moved here, and a bunch of his family came, they moved into the same neighborhood. I don't think that has anything to do with being closed-minded. I think people seek their people, and there's nothing wrong with seeking your people.
I think
I-
that Denver, just for my own frame of reference, I lived in Chicago, so that's something to compare it to. But people talk about Denver like it's so white, that means it's so segregated. I'm sorry, but coming from Chicago, which has a highway splitting it into the white half and the black half, like, this is not as segregated as people give it credit.
Yeah, I don't think because it's
Oh, I would
white
agree.
correlates to segregation. I think that you made a connection there that wasn't necessarily meant to be
Okay.
made.
And you know, I agree with you in the sense that it tends to be when upon arrival. So I'm talking about established populations in a region, and I think that you know, when people come into the country, yeah, it's because they often don't speak the language. It's about familiarity. It's about culture, but at a certain point, you know, the areas where they're blending on the edges, you know, that's what I'm talking about. It's you know, that's where the conflict usually ends up.
But you know, thank you for mentioning that. I was just gonna ask once again. I asked that earlier, but I think it just kind of passed by. Why do you think that people seek their kind? Why do you think that is? Do you think it's simply because it's comfortable, or do you think that it has to do with the fact that they might face a bit less discrimination and they might search for that, you know, shelter with their community? Because it has happened in certain communities where, you know, the new family comes out of town, you know, and they're different, so immediately, like, nobody wants to talk to them. Nobody lets their kids play with them, kind of thing. And so you really don't want to go through that, and it might be, maybe, I don't know this as a fact, but I'm putting it out
No, I
as a
would-
question. Maybe.
I would say that, yeah, it's not an either or thing. I think that you're listing several contributing factors.
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
but are we okay with those things?
I would
It is
say
what
that.
it is.
It
I mean,
I
It
would
is what
say
it-
that
you
it
think
is-
Am I
it's okay that
responsible
people-
for other people's races?
No, but
No, no,
Unless you're
well,
building them by voting
kind
for
of,
them.
kind of. You kind of are when you don't stop it in their tracks. Yeah, I mean,
I mean, you can
you
lead
mentioned
a
it
horse to
yesterday.
water.
You become an enabler when you don't stop those things. You know.
so what do you think he should do?
I
Yeah,
mean,
what is my responsibility to stop racism? Because I'll do it.
I think that. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. I think that one of the best ways to do your part in stopping racism is to not allow the little things, the little comments that sometimes just slip
The
through the cracks
microaggressions.
that you just kind of go like, oh, you know, that's him or that's her.
Well,
Yeah, you know,
then
that's just
every-
kind of how they are. I think that when you make the effort to stop every little thing, eventually, maybe this is just me being optimistic, but I truly believe this. I think eventually people just kind of get the point. It's like that's not okay to say.
People
And the
are-
more we spread that, and the more we tell the people, yes, stop that from
If
the
you
very
s-
beginning.
It'll
Well-
be uncomfortable. It'll definitely be
Hold on.
uncomfortable, but
It's like any type of growth. It hurts.
I
You
said
know?
something uncomfortable earlier where I talked frankly and as kindly as possible about
Yes.
what I think some of the weaknesses of
Yes.
people in this room were.
Yes.
immediately
Yes.
met with a little bit of
that's
hostility.
not
Well-
racial.
No,
Yeah,
but the
but
thing
that's his
is,
point. He's
if we're
trying to point
talking
out
about
that we all
critiquing
need
the
to
white
grow.
race for our overall responsibility in combating racism,
Well,
Which you do
but
have.
No, but
So
let
every
me
conversation
clarify
becomes
this.
Every
me-
conversation becomes this hill to die on. It becomes more of a liability than it becomes helpful. And I'm sorry.
Well,
I
that's just
don't
because
believe
you're
that-
uncomfortable
but-
and you're
but
scared.
let me
don't
clarify
believe-
this. Let me
I don't
clarify
believe
this.
that it's a matter of people being like, oh, you can't say this word because it's going to hurt people's feelings. They're aware that
No,
it's
no,
hurting
no, no,
people's
but
feelings.
let me clarify
You can't
this.
educate that opinion away.
No, I
There's
think
just
that
a
you
fundamental
can't.
thing about people that they're always going to have a reason to dislike each other for one
I
reason
think that
or
But let me,
people-
another.
Go
let me,
ahead.
sorry, let me clarify this. First of all, I'm not saying it's white people's responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility. Okay?
Okay.
In my opinion, everybody is racist. Okay?
I think that's a wonderful
Fair.
thing that you would say that because most people think, well, it's not most people. I went to school and I went to a university in Oregon for a little tiny while and I left quickly because I took a multicultural class and they were teaching this room full of white people who've never left Oregon and have never seen a black person in their life that to be white is to be racist and everyone else is an innocent victim.
Right,
And
this-
they're all nodding their heads going, to be white
Yes,
is to be
this
racist.
this goes
you
okay. So
know?
this goes to one of the points I made yesterday, I believe, as well, is and one of the points I was talking about earlier, these white straight men are almost paying for everything, and they're like condemned that they are the race, they're the embodiment of racism. But I think we all can be guilty of this, and we all can be guilty of sexism. We all can be guilty of all kinds of things, of classism, everything. But now referring more specifically to a point you were making, and it's that, I don't think the answer is to say people, don't say this because it hurts people's feelings. It's a lot more than that. It hurts people because it's not true. We often, but let me finish. We often say, truth hurts. No, not only truth hurts, lies hurt as well. And what happens is that we're for too long, we've been focused on not saying certain things because we think they hurt people. It's a lot more than that. There are certain things that just lies. Like for a child to be taught that another person of color is going to be less smart than them. Okay? Those are things that we have to explain. Because honestly, you're a PhD candidate. Candidate. I don't think you're dumb. You don't lack intelligence. I think you truly don't think that because you're white, you're smarter than me. I mean, there are people out there who do think that, unfortunately. Hopefully not too late for them. But I don't think you think that because your genes, you're smarter than me.
Yeah.
But if we stop people from the very beginning about having any type of rhetoric that goes in that direction, and we explain them why, the truly why, because it's not true, instead of because it hurts people, I think we get a lot farther ahead.
I don't think white people think that they're smarter than people because
No,
There are some white people.
There have
never
been
heard
some.
anyone say that before.
He's
There's
kind of
entire-
taking a comment
there's a
I made
whole
and taking it
process
in a
of
different
racism
direction.
establishment in the US.
Because when I'm commenting on how it's not nice, I don't mean to dilute how profound the feelings are associated to certain attitudes. My point is, no amount of explanation is going to change that type of person's mind.
So you give up on them? What do you propose is the best way to deal with that? Because you're not okay with it, or as you.
We have to understand, kind of.
So just
No.
suck it up. So suck it up.
Unfortunately,
No.
people are
It's easy to say to another person just suck it up when you're not in the receiving end of all that hatred. You know what I mean?
But a war, it's like
because people don't hate white men right now.
it's a war on matter.
But you're
Yeah.
saying it right now too.
Impossible.
I'm trying to be like pacifying about that. And I'm saying, you understand, right?
Yes, I
But
understand.
here's the thing, though,
There's a
it
lot of
becomes
people of color who think that they're smarter than white people.
there's
Yeah, it's. We should stop all of them. But sorry.
it's
Please.
just an issue of the fact that people are always going to have reasons to fight each other. It's kind of like a war on rhetoric, which, by the way, what you're describing, telling people what they can and cannot say, is a fundamental.
Yeah, it's
in-
unconstitutional.
No, I
There's
would.
the
I
First
disagree.
Amendment. The
on hate
First
speech.
Amendment.
That's not what he's saying though.
Okay.
He's not saying controlling what people are allowed to say and what they aren't.
Changing the
He's
culture.
describing policing.
No, he's not.
No, he's
No,
describing
no.
culturally-
and lecturing people is a.
Nope, that's not what he's saying either.
No, people.
But
Okay,
you're
so
not saying
people will always have the right to say whatever the hell they want, but
Then you
there are
can't be
cer-
surprised when
no.
you don't like what you hear sometimes.
No. But true. But what we should be policing is truth. Okay. Right now, especially. Well,
that's a hard
there are
one with,
lot-
because these people, like a lot of times, the people who believe these things, they feel that they have proof. Back to what you were saying before. There's books and books and books written about this in terms of skull shape and size and all of these random measurements of like what determined why white people were smarter than any other minority, and it's completely false. But there is that, and they point to that, and they say that that's supporting evidence.
I think
And
that
so
the people who believe that
fact
though, are
is a hard
small
thing that
pocket
way.
of people. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I know it exists, but I don't think it's significant enough to address it to the entire.
I think it's bigger
white
than you
affects-
think.
I
I
think-
think
if it
affects anyone,
I
it's
think it's
significant.
bigger than you think it is.
If it affects
Yes.
anyone, it's significant.
I think it's bigger than you think it is, though, because there are a lot of people who have these bias that they think that as a white person they are smarter than people of color, and it's something that they don't even address.
Why would you say that
Okay.
though? What have you experienced to make
That's
you think that?
historic.
I mean, exactly,
Yeah, I mean that's well documented. And if you look politically,
I mean, I want to know her personal experience.
And okay, so there's just after since Trump has become president, there's a lot of things that are coming out about people's beliefs that they've never said before and that they've never addressed before. And so there are a lot of these like tiny biases that are subconscious that you're not talking about all the time about. I've met a lot of people who have been racist in that way, who have thought, well, I'm smarter than a person of color. I am more able than a person of color.
But what have they done to make you think that?
The way that they talk.
The way they talk, do you think
That's
it's
just big
condescending?
enough to mean.
I mean, not even condescending, but the way they talk about people of color.
Can you
I
give an
just feel like,
example, or?
I mean, kind of. I feel like the fact that I'm put on the spot is it's hard for me
Yeah, yeah.
to give you an example.
Can you think of an
Um,
example? I
yeah.
mean, you're a person of color, right? Technically, kind of, in America.
Super.
What do you think?
Super person
Super
of color.
person of color.
I mean, what do you-
Super
Can
all
you-
the way,
can you
100% person of color.
ask the question?
What has happened in your life to make the statement so confidently that white people think they're smarter than colored people?
I wouldn't say a statement like that. I wouldn't
That's
say
my
a
more.
statement. That's, yeah.
I thought
wouldn't
you
say,
said.
my
Did
more
you say that?
opinion.
no. What
He
I
said
said,
sometimes he was
I said,
referring
I
to
don't-
very specific white people, not all.
I said
Yeah.
to him, I don't believe that you think this
Him personally?
personally, and I don't think that he believes that either.
But white people.
But I said no. But I said there must be some people that might think that.
And also,
Because there is some people that
But you've
think
never
might
experienced
think
it
anything.
personally.
I will say,
I've heard it on
No,
conservative talk
no, but
radio.
I've read
Right.
Rush
but
And
Limbaugh
I
says
I got
stuff
raked
like
over
that.
the coals the other day because I made a comparison to white responsibility when we're talking about people call the Republican Party Islamophobic all the time. And it's because the Republican Party makes statements like Islam must take responsibility for the things it does.
No, that's not why they.
no, that's not why.
No, it's because
No,
they
it's
put a
more like-
ban
So
on
how
they
it
could've
stands on people coming from countries
Can-
because they're predominantly Muslim, but only isolating ones that don't do business with Trump.
Why are we
Can I
pretending
also
this is
say-
the first
can I
time
also
this has happened
say-
in American history?
Just to
That doesn't mean
another
it's okay,
example,
We had
another
slavery.
an example.
Let Mandy talk, please.
Y'all,
Thank you.
yo.
Alright, sorry.
An example that is easier to find is just if you look at any comment section on any almost any video, you can find a large amount of the comments from white people if it's a racial video
The
of sort.
sad thing about that though
But
is
people are gonna troll everything.
trolls.
Okay, but those
Extremist
trolls, a lot of extremist trolls are still thoughts that are coming from them. Those are still thoughts that they have about being, as a white person, smarter
Do you ever
than people
consider
of
how
color.
much power you're giving these trolls?
I'm not
though?
giving them any power
That's
because
But
I don't
you're
respond to
mentioning
them.
right now.
Sure.
You're
But they
bringing them
affect
up
you.
as a relevant point.
Well, I'm not giving them power because they
But-
don't
and no
know
offense,
that I'm
but-
talking about them.
But
White
think of-
people commenting on racial videos. I mean, yeah, the nature of responding to the video is gonna attract opinions of both directions. All
But I'm
directions.
just saying, if you'd like to see examples, there are examples in almost any
I think I
comment
would
section
But,
of any video.
Real world.
But
Well, yeah, I'm just
So,
saying, just
I mean,
to,
the president,
for yourself
the president
to see.
said that with Omarosa. I mean, he made comments repeatedly about her intelligence.
Of
And
Maxine
that's a
Waters
documented
too.
thing historically about intelligence relating to people of color.
I think that might have
Trump
actually been a
talks
male
about
female
lots
thing.
of people
No, it was
that
a
he doesn't
complete.
think
It
are
was a
intelligent.
Okay, but
racial thing.
right now we're getting
Wait,
caught.
no.
Ted.
How many people has Trump called dumb?
A lot.
How many white people has Trump called dumb?
A
This
lot.
is not a
A
good
lot.
enough reason to say that he's racist.
A lot, but he has also made claims that are relating to them, like their appearance of looking like a monkey or something,
Can we
and
get
be
some
less.
And he
specifics?
encourages
I
When
just
this
has
named
Donald
negative
Trump-
rhetoric.
when has
I mean, and
Donald
we're
Trump
talking
ever-
about Maxine Waters. We're talking about Omarosa. Like, he's made comments about, and I can't even remember. There was someone that I
Yeah,
know.
it's
Well, I
really-
wish I had an example, but it exists. I'm not lying about it.
Google it. You have your laptop right there.
I think the
Where
thing
he
is,
did
like,
talk about
I
her
feel
looking
for
like
people
a
of
girl.
color. I would not want to be a person of color in America. I would not want to be. And I think the simple fact that I would say something like that is an indication of something bigger.
That there's a problem.
That there is a problem. However, I don't think that pointing your finger, wagging your finger at the entire white population and telling them that they are wrong. and
Which
that
is not what I
That
did.
will never amount to anything. I'm
Well,
not saying you
it's
did.
right,
I'm
right,
saying
right. Like how-
the whole people of
But,
color movement. Can I
I-
hold on just
yes.
a second? The whole people of color movement is saying you guys are wrong. You owe us. We are on the pedestal now. You need to say you're sorry. White
I
is
feel like
racist.
that's super
Do
not
you
what's
clearly
going
did not
on.
look at Black Lives Matter in their platform whatsoever.
That's
I'm
not
sorry.
what's
I went
going
to-
on.
Lives
It's
I'm
not like
telling
she.
you,
It's
and-
not like she's wrong about how people on the left tend to make blanket statements about people that they haven't
Well,
really
and
people on
tried
the right don't
imagining
do
how
that.
to think.
Everybody
allowed
makes
everyone
blanket
else to
statements
finish their
about it.
points.
Everybody. When
Have you
we're
guys
calling
heard-
it out.
Have you
every
guys really
single
not
second.
heard that people of color are like completely demonizing the entire white population?
Yeah, hell yeah, I've
I'm
heard
sorry,
that.
And do you
but
think
if I
that's
could
I
say
think-
beneficial
one
in any
point,
way?
I
please.
what?
It's simply that it's the same mentality you have about the election. It's like, oh, all these Trump people are racist, but you're gonna vote for me in 2020, right? Because we're better now. We're the better part. But no, it's you're putting us all into the same box, and then you're saying that you're wrong, and we have been making zero attempts to make a better argument. You're saying
I
that
don't think.
It's an
Okay, I
enabling.
don't think that all white people are racist by any
Just
means.
Trump supporters.
At all. No, and I don't think all Trump, and I've never said that. I don't think Trump supporters are racist, all Trump supporters. I don't think all white people are racist. I don't think any of that. But I do think that it shouldn't be that hard if you're not racist. You do have a little bit of responsibility to right those around you when they
I
make
disagree.
racist
No person
when they
has
make I'm going to
responsibility
finish my
over us.
sentence.
Go ahead.
When they make racist statements and when they have microaggressions against people of color, it is your responsibility, not as a white man, but as a human being. And the fact that you shy away from that responsibility is very concerning.
As an
because
American-
it shouldn't
as
be
an
that
American-
hard.
How about
person.
I don't hang around with people who use the N-word? I don't hang around with people who are saying things that I have to correct all the time.
Okay,
so what
but
am I
you're
supposed
still
to
gonna
do?
hear
Go
it.
seek out assholes?
Well, the thing is and
No,
what
but
you were
I mean,
saying
like, in
earlier.
public, if you
Policing
see,
what
you know,
people
it's
say.
like when you go
Policing
to
what
the
people
airport.
No, it's
you
not
know?
policing what people
If
say.
you see something, you say something.
Policing.
It's not policing what people say. It's giving an opinion and trying to help right a terrible mindset. And what you were saying earlier about that just looking for an example and not seeing it. The sad reality is, and this isn't meant to be negative, but y'all don't see it and I see it. And I don't have it may be something that you're going, well, I don't really see that often. And I don't hang out with people like that. But I see it all the time. I deal with something racial and racist and microaggressions every day of my life.
And no one's denying that, but I'm saying that I'm responsible for one person, me.
Absolutely
Oh,
not.
right.
Let me tell you a very
Everybody's
simple
responsible
example.
for
Let me,
their
gi- let me give you a very
own
simple
place in this
example.
world.
So we have the freedom to say whatever we want. Wrong.
Yeah.
No. There are certain things we don't have the freedom to say. For example, fire. On a full
Yeah.
amphitheater. You can't say that. Right. Why can't you say that?
There's an immediate threat to people's safety that's not present with racism.
You don't think so?
If you
People
start
are
if
That-
you go
it's-
fire
and that
in a
might- okay,
crowded room,
that
people
might
are going
be
to
the-
trample each
That
other.
might be that one of the things where we might disagree in the most. I can't. This
Categorically.
frustrates me so much. Categorically, yes, correct.
I'm-
Why? Because you don't think that racism is an immediate threat. Yet it is. There are people who get killed every day who are
That's
harassed
not
every
what I'm
day
saying. I'm
about
saying
this.
there's a
And it
difference.
doesn't only go towards people of color. It also goes towards people who are white. This is not something that is supposed to just save us and screw you guys because
I'm
you
not
guys are the
saying that
perpetrators.
racism
This goes
isn't
both
a
ways.
problem.
This
I'm
goes both
saying
ways.
problem.
And I want to be as eager to stop the very small pocket of people who might say ridiculous things as because I'm white, I'm smarter than everybody else. I want to be as eager about stopping those people as people of color who have absolutely no understanding that what they say and the way that they frame certain things is also hurting the new generation of white people who are just resenting them for the way that they're treated. You understand what I mean?
Yes, and I am trying to bridge the gap between that and my life. Again, I'm not hanging around with that element, and I'm sorry, it happens to you all the time. That's awful.
Yeah.
But I'm not there.
Right.
How can I?
What is he supposed
Well,
to
Why?
do?
you know, but
What am I
it-
supposed
mean,
to
the
do?
way-
You might be there one time. And it doesn't have to be your friends. We're not talking about your immediate circle. We're talking about the great. You go out into the population, don't you?
And
So-
I mind my business.
It's really
So-
white in Denver,
so
though,
you
so
know-
there's not very many opportunities to like.
Yeah, but white people, a room of unchecked white people is the craziest thing ever.
What do you mean?
Like a room of just
Whoa.
yeah, no, I'll say it.
Thanksgiving
Let
at
me
my
say
house.
it. Okay, so a room of white
family.
people with just completely unchecked, with no people of color in the room.
I could say that about Hispanics.
Right?
and
Okay,
about
we
blacks.
could, but right now,
let's
but right
put that
now
clear
I'm saying-
first.
No, I
No,
I
I'm
think
gonna
that's
say
fair.
my point about a room of unchecked white people.
Let her finish her statement.
Okay.
Okay, are you often in a room of unchecked white people? Are you in a room of all white people? Because I often am in a room of all white people. So I'm sure you are. So in those situations, I'm sure that whether or not they're saying something, like they're not talking about a specific black person and calling them the N-word, but I'm sure there are microaggressions happening all the time that you are not defending against.
I also don't devote 100% of my attention to the possibility of microaggressions and every
And
But
also,
it's
you're,
very
you're
important.
making an
I'm sorry.
assumption that a room full of white people is just going to make a habit of talking
I'm not
about how they
saying-
don't like people of color.
I'm not
but
saying
what-
all the time.
When she said that, kind of what Miguel backed on there is that it is true. Any isolated group on the extreme
Yes.
has that happen.
Any group.
Whether it's a group of black people, whether it's a group of Hispanic people, whether it's a group of Asian people, whether it's a group of white people, the further you get towards the extremist side, the more that happens. That happens in isolated groups all over. You know.
This is
That's
why
called mob
isolationism is-
mentality, and those people don't do
So
bad
my
things
point
on
is-
their
so-
own.
so
that's
mutually
a different
exclusive
kind of
to
control.
white people.
I have a question
No.
for you guys. Have you guys ever seen racism in your face, like actively in front of you?
Yes.
I could think of
And what
something
did you
I've heard.
do?
I told my dad to shut up and leave Buckman alone.
So
Oh,
there.
good for you.
So this whole time you're arguing, you don't need to stand up, and you fucking did it.
No, see, there's a difference between saying that it's my responsibility to go out and seek this fight.
Oh, no one
like
said you
No one
should
said
like
that.
anything. We're
No one
just
said
saying if
that.
you see something, say something.
Yeah, no,
It's
said
I
your
think well the thing is
responsibility.
you say it's not my responsibility, but I think that's what makes us American.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
I think this is
I see-
this is bring out the flag and sing the national anthem moment. But
Right?
truly, that's what makes us American. We stand up for the weak. I mean, don't you
Yeah.
want to be part of that? Don't you want to be the one that stands up for the weak, the one that says, no, what you're doing is wrong? Don't we want to be the ones that extend to everybody?
Well, and additionally, if you're saying your sole responsibility is for yourself, how is there ever going to be improvement? How is it ever going to become
Because
checked
every
and go?
person has to be responsible for their own actions.
Yeah, but what
But
about
if
the
there's
people
no
that
learning and no education,
In a
You
perfect-
know what the justice
That don't
system
want
is
to be.
for.
The
but
thing
the
this
justice
is-
system clearly isn't checking that. If there's people in power that are instilling and reinforcing the rhetoric of racism in the population in the U.S.
That is like
Yeah.
assuming that the current system is flawless, which by the conversation that we had yesterday, I think we all agree that it's not. Okay, so
Our
we could
ideals
say,
are
oh,
great,
that's
but we're
what
people.
our system is for, is to check those sorts of things. But
No idea.
I
This is
think
perfect.
I think that y'all are latching on to the thought that you're supposed to go out and be a vigilante and like that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying that you're supposed to go out and seek out injustices and make them right. I'm not saying that you need to police people's way of thinking or speaking. What I'm saying is and I'm just talking about white people right now. I know you don't like that. But if you are encountered with an ignorant white person who is saying microaggressions, doing microaggressions,
Or
okay.
ignorant Mexican person.
Right.
or
I would
ignorant-
I know, but I
would
really
not-
do. I really,
Thank you.
I'm okay, well, y'all can speak from your own cultural backgrounds, but right now, I'm going to say that if you see a person who is white, who is ignorant to a certain thing, okay, I'm not asking you to do the most. I'm just asking you to tell them that that's wrong.
That's policing.
That's not
people.
policing.
Yes, that is absolutely
I'm
policing.
All right,
That's
Kale,
taking
what
responsibility
you're
for
doing
someone
right
else's
now
actions,
then,
and
by
ain't
that
my job.
requirement, by that, you're policing my thoughts. You're policing, by arguing with me, you are policing my speech. Because you are telling me that you won't do that with somebody else about racism, but you'll do it with me right now.
I'm having a disagreement with you in a discussion.
You're
Sure.
having a
But
disagreement with
there's
me in a
difference.
discussion.
I'm
We're
sorry,
also
you've
in
had
a
your
So you
pedestal
can
for
have a
moment
disagreement
now.
with me.
You've
We're
had your
here to
pedestal for a
talk.
moment, and
That
it's
actually
funny
is the
because
goal.
we actually have said the least on this row.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if it's going to be a two-sided discussion. Let's listen to each other. I believe that
Me?
the idea. Yes,
I've talked the least.
check the tape. Someone, please.
Please do, yeah.
Anyways, there's this idea that you think the most American thing possible is to stick up for the little guy. I think the most American thing possible is to stick up for what makes us Americans. Things like the First Amendment. Things that, like, you have your right to tell me what you think, and that I
And the
have
same
my
goes for
right.
you.
But I'm protecting freedom of speech, even when if it disagrees with me. You have every right to say what you're
Yes,
saying.
yes. I
I
yes.
do not want to
That is
interfere with
there
that.
is an
And
excellent
I don't want
point.
to interfere with that for anyone, because as soon as you attack one type of speech, then everything comes on the table.
Listen, man,
It is a slippery slope.
that is an excellent point. If we were to ignore what I told you before, not everything is to be said. If a person was sitting right next to you in a theater, and he was and you know they're about to say something like fire, blah blah blah, wouldn't you
not-
say, hey, dude,
Do you know what
like,
charge
what are
you
you
get
doing?
when you do that? It's inciting a riot. It's not saying the word
Okay,
fire
but
off
answer
the
what
table.
he
Yeah,
just
the
said.
law
Like,
actually
But it's
girl,
an
like
example.
what,
It's an
what he
example.
just what he just said.
But wouldn't you?
made
But
a-
wouldn't you stop it,
It made a huge.
dude? Like,
It's an apple and oranges scenario.
Okay, I'm
'cause-
sorry.
I
Can
know
I just
what
say
anybody's
something really
gonna
quick?
do.
I think this whole conversation is like super kind of comical because Colorado is the least racist place I've ever been. And if you don't mind me saying, if you're from here in any way, shape, or form, you probably really don't know what you're talking about when it comes to racism. If you want to go, if you really
I
want to
mean,
understand,
unless you're like,
hold
I've
on,
traveled
me.
around the world.
just a second. If you really want,
Oh my
well, no,
God.
because you're a person of color, right?
Right.
But you also
But
are
I do know
very.
what I'm talking about. If
you're
you're talking about
also-
racism.
The people of color in the
Personal
South
experience.
are not like the people of color anywhere else in the nation. Okay? Not even close. I went to school in Mississippi.
I did
I
as
would-
well.
I would walk into my
Nice.
school, the black people sat over here and the white people sat over here. They never spoke to each other. And a lot of the stereotypes that they had were true. They were true. The problem is their cultural differences were too stark. And so if a white person said a stereotypical yet factual statement about a person of color, who would police that and why if it's true? And vice
What
versa.
is it?
Oh, okay,
What's
okay.
the
And vice
responsibility?
versa.
what
Racist
stereotypes
is
are true?
true.
What kind of stereotypes?
Do you
are-
believe in stereotypes?
That they're a
They
thing.
exist.
Do you
Yeah.
believe in them?
That it's a thing.
People
I mean, I believe in the
occasionally embody
concept
them.
of stereotyping.
Well, you're acting like this is a crazy question. It's an easy question. Do you
I
believe in stereotypes?
literally
or not?
just answered your
Do
question.
you believe in stereotypes?
I believe they. Here's the thing. I believe them as an observation. You can observe certain things that certain
You don't
people
think that
will
there's
behave.
different
No, I
cultural
believe they're
behavior?
a hyperbolization.
Do you believe that
of-
there's specific cultural behavioral characteristics in different races that you can like characterize?
that you can observe, yes.
Yes.
you can
Okay,
observe
so if
certain things,
another
okay.
person who doesn't share those characteristics points that characteristic out,
Okay.
that would make them racist in a lot of people's eyes. So to be PC, we have to pretend like those characteristics don't exist.
Like what?
Okay,
like,
not
I'd love to
necessarily.
hear
For
an
example, I
I'm
can
not
look
opening
at
up that
I can
can
look
of
at
worms.
Aaliyah's
Oh, okay,
family.
So you've got no.
I can look at
support in
Aaliyah's family and I say, well, they're very warm people. They're black. They're very warm. They're very loving, and they're very loud.
And statistically more likely to have strong.
You know what I mean? That doesn't make me a racist.
Well, it might, because I've known a lot of black women who do not like to be considered loud.
Well, that's the perpetuation of like the angry black woman.
But why?
thing.
But is that?
And
is
that's
it, let's be
different.
honest,
That's a
it's
little
not
bit
fair.
different.
It's not nice to be called that. But do you think that
It's totally-
stereotypical is rooted in any truth at all?
Can you say what you just said again?
Do you think the stereotype of women being what you just said,
Like an angry black woman.
an angry black woman, do you think that stereotype is rooted in any truth?
There's two things I believe about that, because I think that stereotypes, like you're saying, come from an observation that has been like snowballed, is what I think. And the same goes for that. Like I feel like angry black women, yeah, black women were angry and they still are, but it's a hurtful stereotype to make about black women, to act like all of them are loud and unruly and
But
I
is
don't
it
believe-
rooted in truth?
I
here's
don't
the-
believe I don't believe exactly that that's rooted in truth, because I feel like it was purposely made true.
It's
I
a
believe that
stereotype
it-
that doesn't apply to like the grand population of all
Right,
black
but I
people.
believe that it was, I don't want to use the word forced, but I believe that it was, for lack of a better word, forced upon that culture.
Well, what about
I feel like-
different stereotypes?
But I mean,
like Hispanics.
I'm
was
gonna touch something about what you said, and then I'll
Thank you.
answer that question. So one is, I think one of the problems is that it has a bad connotation, right? So when you talk
Right.
about angry black woman, you're not just saying angry black woman. You're talking about the
Race.
the race, the bad
Word is in
connotation
there.
that comes with that term. Okay, so obviously a woman's gonna be very offended that you think, oh, just a crazy old black woman. That's it.
And I understand that, obviously.
Right. But then there's the other thing about stereotypes is how you use them. Okay, there's I think it's maybe fair to say as an observation that in a Latino community you will find a lot of very sexualized people, because we're a very sexualized
Yes. Culture.
culture. But it wouldn't be fair to assume that I'm going to be a very sexual person if you're just meeting me and you're thinking about dating me. You're
But
like,
would it
oh,
be
no,
fair?
I'm sure you are super sexual. That would be a completely wrong use of that stereotype. Very.
But it's all relative, though, right? It's all relative because, for
Oh,
example,
because you
people in
couldn't be
your
able
culture,
to. You shouldn't be able to assume that I'm going to be
But
a
why
super
not, though?
sexual
Because,
person
like you
just
said, people
because
in your
I'm
culture,
Latino.
when they
But
meet
you
you,
could say,
you can
yes,
sort
you
of
will
think-
find a lot of sexual people in the Latino culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the individualization
But you're
of a
asking
broad
white
concept
people
to an
to
individual.
ignore facts rooted in truth because it might be hurtful. Which reminds me of a quote that I heard the other day that they're really pushing in the liberal agenda is it's better to be nice than to be right. It's better to be kind than to be right. And when you have a lot of people who
Oh, we
say,
have that in between men and women too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you tell a woman she looks good in that.
Okay, well, anyway. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with denying fact because people might get hurt. It's that safe space
But
idea.
what do you mean denying fact?
In what cases
Because
is
their
it protecting?
stereotypes exist because they're rooted in truth. They're general statements.
They're
I
general,
agree.
but that's what I'm talking about. They're general statements, but you can't.
They can't
as
be
he said,
taken
you
as
can't-
truth if they cannot be applied to everyone in a population.
But
Exactly.
you're asking people to pretend those stereotypes aren't real.
No,
Ladies
but if
and
you were
gentlemen,
10% of the
your
population.
opinions and intellect continue to astound. It's time for a break for you, don't you think?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Ding ding, round one. Right.
Welcome back. Hope everybody had a nice refreshment and a nice break. So, when we left, we discussed Denver. Peaceful, tranquil, amazing. Everybody agreed. But somehow, in this discussion, it escalated into reverse racism. How did that happen? I would like to hear your opinions, but please, when someone has the floor, let them keep the floor for a moment. And then we'll talk a little bit more as we go. Mr. H, how did we get there?
Well, we went from talking about the state of Denver to talking about racism, and I believe it was because Aaliyah talked about Denver's progress moving forward in specific places as gentrification. Okay, everybody's gonna hate me in a second, everybody's gonna be mad, but we're just gonna do some American history really quickly. We signed the Constitution, and that was based on what document? Does anybody know? Magna Carta, which was signed by Prince John, King John at the time, and that was basically his people browbeat him into giving them rights because he had been a terrible king. And we essentially did something similar here. That Eurocentric achievement is actually part of American DNA. Now, everybody hates this, but the Magna Carta preceded an era of European colonialism. And we talk about the larger effects of that, and the largest effect of that is we brought the world into the modern age. We are a Eurocentric culture. We take things, we push them forward. That's what we do. That is the American identity. So we went from talking about Denver to talking about racism. We went from talking about Denver to talking about racism based on the simple fact that you can't look at moving forward and expect change to be painless. You have to break the old world to make the new, which we've done over and over and over again. So we were discussing Denver, and everybody was pretty hunky-dory, and then we hit gentrification. And actually, you came to America's defense with another thing people hate. Stereotypes exist. As much as we hate all of them, white stereotypes exist because certain white people embody specific traits. America has grown so sensitive that we can't look at progress without seeing the bad things we leave behind as a loss. And I think that's just silly.
Why?
Would you want to live in the world the way it was 100 years ago? Would anybody here want to live in the world the way it was 100 years ago?
No.
No. So why are we acting like that's a bad thing? You push
because
forward.
a lot of the things still
No,
exist
but
today.
that's not my question. I said, why do you? Why is it silly that we look towards all the things that's lost, the things that we didn't get right?
The things
Why is
that
that
we
silly?
replace get replaced by better things.
Okay.
We replaced the Magna Carta with the United States Constitution.
Okay.
We're not looking back at the Magna Carta wishing that we still had that thing.
Yes.
So why are we looking at something that is ostensibly worse in any way we can judge it and mourning its loss? I'm just confused.
I don't
Mr.
know
H.
which one of us.
Mr. H has the floor. Can we let him continue?
I just don't see where he's
Mr.
going.
H has the floor. Let him continue. You'll have your chance.
Please
sir.
continue.
Okay. We talk about Denver as a sanctuary city. I mean, you're supposed to listen to the president, but states' rights. I don't know exactly how I feel about how Denver's behaving in this situation. But you look, everybody admitted that they didn't want to live in the world 100 years ago. 100 years from now, everybody's going to say they didn't want to live in the world now. I don't see that as a bad thing. I really don't.
Okay.
It's because some of the things are still happening now. Racism still exists. That's personally what I'm talking about with that.
When you... Yes, Professor.
Yes. Points well made. You're very vocal. I love it. But not right now. Krista, please, continue. How did that make you feel?
What the conversation prior or this one
From
here?
going to Denver to the escalation.
Oh, I see.
How did we get there?
I have been given the awesome opportunity to travel all over the world and to experience cultures. As a white woman, I have spent the large majority of my life as a minority. And so I feel like that's allowed me to see things from different perspectives. When I live in a place where the culture is the same, even though we are all different races, it's hard to have a discussion on cultural differences because we are all of the same culture in this room. We are. We might look different, but in my opinion, we are all pretty similar. Now, if you go to a place that's truly different, like, and I keep mentioning the South because it's my frame of reference here, and I also think the reason why Trump won. The differences there between those cultures are not something that you can just tell the other culture they're wrong or they're right because we don't know how they feel. And the problem, I think, with people of color in this nation, from what I understand, is that they are angry. They're angry that things aren't the way they want them to be. But as Andrew was mentioning, we have evolved and grown so much, and growth only occurs when two contradictory forces collide. And so, in a way, we should be thankful that our differences exist. And we should be, instead of combative and condescending and non-empathetic to each other, we should consider our differences and try to understand our differences and grow from them, right? In my personal opinion, I feel like it's better to be right than to be kind. Why do I think that? Because if we're not right, how will we ever grow? It'll be all based on a false foundation.
Building a house on quicksand.
It was well said, Krista. Thank you for sharing. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole, your thoughts on the same subject.
Cope?
I'm sorry, Mr. Cope.
Yeah.
I will get it right one of these days.
Well, you know, the way that I see it, we started out talking about Denver, and it was, you know, kind of we had many points of agreement, and then what kind of happened is, you know, I mean, discussion isn't made on if we agree on everything, then it's no point in talking about it. So it's, you know, it kind of, that concept kind of drove us down the path that we did, and I saw, to me, I think the transition started, I believe Krista mentioned something about lack of diversity here as being something she wasn't used to, and that got us talking. I know Leah brought up gentrification, and I think that was a catalyst there, was that lack of diversity, and then talking about how gentrification has shaped and affected the area, which then got Miguel talking about the responsibility of people regarding the different races and having a lack of diversity, and what can be done to help prevent talking about people in a derogatory way, or what is important for others to do to support the minority communities, and how to provide them with the support, you know, because their voice isn't as loud, and it seems that other people tended to believe, you know, I believe Andy and Theodore both didn't see it as any kind of a responsibility on their part to make our community better by helping support these people around us. From there, it you know, it kind of, I mean, I tended to agree with Miguel regarding the belief that it's a responsibility as an American to, you know, as I said before, when you see something, say something. But, you know, we kind of got sidetracked there, and we're talking about stereotypes. I believe Krista brought that up, and, you know, had this concept that stereotypes are rooted in truth. And I would say that a lot of times it's subjective. And we did talk, you know, I think kind of in the middle, what really drove us down that path was hyperbolization on both sides. You know, I think that, and that often is the problem, is that, you know, it's racism isn't every white man, it's not every, you know, person, and it's the same thing. As soon as we start hyperbolizing it, it creates this blanket statement that I don't believe accurately represents anything. There's really, you know, the absolutes are problematic because it doesn't truly exist. And you know, kind of going on to the right versus kind concept that we discussed a bit, you know, I think that it only works for objective concepts. So as soon as it becomes a subjective problem, it no longer right versus kind. There is no right in a subjective argument, and so it becomes very difficult to have a right versus kind when there is no right, and it's an argument about ideology or point of view. And it seemed like that was, you know, the majority of it is an ideology point of view discussion. And I think that hyperbolization really made it difficult for us to kind of meet in the middle and have a discussion about it, because it's you're this, you're that, and not really paying attention. I think that kind of plays back into the whole stereotype concept in terms of, you know, stereotype. There's no stereotype that exists that actually represents that entire population. None. There's nothing where all people are this, you know, and so that plays in. It's a hyperbole that has kind of rotted our nation in a way, because hyperbolization and wow factor is kind of a big thing right now. And, you know, I think if we're able to steer more towards statements of either subjective viewpoint or the ability to stay kind of away from blanket statements, I think that'll help us with our discussion as a whole. I think that we'll actually find that we do have some common ground in a lot of these areas, just like kind of how we started, where we all agreed. I mean, Theodore brought it up. We all agreed that Denver's a great place to be, and you know, it's hard because if we only talk about the stuff we agree on, it's hard to really get to the root of the issues. But if we hyperbolize the opposite viewpoint, it causes a lot of problems for us to be understood as a group and individually. So, as Forrest Gump said, that's all I have to say about that.
Very good, Mr. Cope. I apologize earlier for your name. I was saying the silent P. Now, both China and America are two superpowers. Of course, China is an emerging superpower. How is it that the United States stays on top? What can we do as a nation to continue to stay on top in that area? Discuss amongst yourselves, please.
I think our reasonings for staying on top is pop culture. People in all over the world love American music, they love American movies, they love American media. And so it's becoming English. Everyone speaks English wherever you go. It's
Except for
truly
here.
become the world language. So I think at this point, even if the United States of America falls for whatever reason, maybe GDP or whatever, culturally, I believe the Western perspective will stay on top.
I think that's a little alarmist, this idea that we're heading towards our downfall. I think the way that America stays on top is to just put our own best interests forward first, which we kind of have been letting everybody suckle at our teat for the past 70 years.
But have you noticed that China and the United States are completely intertwined? That we are actually one and the same at this point?
Which is
That's
a
it.
Well, I don't know
problem.
about one and the same, but we're definitely interconnected.
There's an interdependency. There's not.
That I think
prominent
we should
similarity.
step away from.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but here's the thing, though.
We
Like, I
don't
mean,
need
if
the
you were to
currency
look
manipulation.
at like a CIA fact book, you know, 10, 20 years ago, like when we were kids, like young kids, looking at our position in the world, I mean, these are objective metrics. It's not like, you know, a subjective point of view. it's objective metrics about health, it's objective metrics about education and things like that, that, you know, we've slipped considerably in many areas.
Which is why we need to be focusing inward instead of assisting everybody else on their way.
Well, you
This
know,
has
I
nothing
think
to do with that. Like,
the assisting is far less of a drain than war. You know, if we were to
War
take,
drives innovation.
that's a very far.
Your
point.
computer
oh yeah, let's
is
go to
based
war
on
for
war.
innovation. Yes, let's kill people for innovation.
No.
You're surprising me.
No. Okay,
That's a-
I need to rephrase because you're right. That
Thanks.
wasn't fair.
Great.
Our military drives innovation, even in peacetime.
Great.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, and I also think that, you know, having a budget that's, if I was doing something where I had a budget that was the equivalent of the 7 next companies, you know, I would expect that I would have some damn innovation. You know, it's the same thing. Like
Give it to education. You probably get innovation too. If you give
Yeah.
that amount of money to education.
If we put that money back into the education system, I bet our innovation would be much stronger. And it's interesting because you look at a lot of the innovation that our country has had, and a lot of it has come from foreigners.
Yes, but they're American when they make it.
No, not necessarily. They're often working on green cards and other government visas.
With our resources in our country.
But the
I-
resources
Oh,
we've stolen.
Well, then what does that mean about foreign countries that
you mean
operate
the
within our
resources
country?
we've stolen from other countries?
Those
Those resources you mean?
steals from each other.
Oh yeah.
China's manipulating currency all the time. That isn't theft?
Oh, what aboutism? There we go. Here we go again.
What is what?
What about
No,
What about
when
it?
the world stage is a
Deflecting.
dirty place, you either play dirty or you get run over.
Listen,
And
I-
America spent a
listen.
long time taking it on the chin, and that's dumb.
Listen,
And if you're not
the
at
U.S.
the
is
table,
on
you're
top
not
now,
at the
not for anything we've been doing now, but something we've been doing for maybe hundreds of years, and it's been taking advantage of smaller countries.
No.
But like you
Oh my
said,
God,
based
yes.
on objective
This is something you
statistics-
said last.
I'm not
Yesterday.
I'm not negating the fact that we've taken advantage of small countries. That
Okay.
that is obviously true. But I genuinely, like I said at the very beginning, and I'll just reiterate it, I really definitely think that social media and the freedom of press in America and the freedom of speech in America is allowing the transfer of information to parts of the world that have never understood this way of life. And that's revolutionary in and of itself. Maybe this is why this book wasn't published in China, is because of that reason.
Think about
You
all
know?
the problem and how intrusive Facebook, for example, has been in some other countries where there hasn't been enough regulation. Some people have
It's voluntary
only Facebook.
spyware.
No, some people only have Facebook in some countries. And they refer to the internet
Oh,
and
yeah.
Facebook as interchangeable.
Is that Burma?
Yeah. They think that everything they get from Facebook is their news. That's what you think has put us on top? No, we've been on top way before social
I
media.
never said that we weren't on top
But that's
before
what you-
social
but
media.
that's what you
just
implied.
made- no, I never did.
But based on objective statistics, the U.S. is not number one, and we're referring to
No,
it
no,
as-
we're not
and
anymore.
in well-being, health, education.
We're not, that's right.
And
we
you
were
have the
at
best
some point, but
standard
not
of
for
living.
anything
we
we're
have
doing
been
now.
in
No,
different.
we don't have the
as
best
a
standard of
whole, the
living as a
U.S. has
whole.
never been number one, and this has been evidenced in many European and Western studies comparing Western and Eastern, and comparing us to Europe. And it's just objectively not true that the U.S. isn't number one and has not been for a
Each
while.
European country that has some of these more progressive
Nonsense
government,
policies.
I guess, government entitlement programs.
You can say
I just-
socialism is fine.
It's not offensive.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
All these countries, socialist countries like Norway and Denmark. You look
Well,
at their
accessibility to
population-
healthcare, especially in the UK and the NHS.
Yeah, but look
Yeah,
at
and
the
how many
population of the
citizens do they
UK
have?
versus the population of the United States.
Yeah,
You
but
don't-
look at how much
So-
land we have, how many natural resources
but-
we have. It should be.
But we funnel so much money, like we were saying before, we funnel so much money into military, and if we were funneling as much into education, and you look at education
Most of your
demographics,
tax
you
dollar
look at
goes
violence
towards-
demographics, and the U.S. just isn't stacking up next to these other countries.
But most of your tax dollar goes towards Social Security.
No, those,
No,
that's
a
that's
state
that's
of
what's
fact.
called
You could-
that's an
not-
insurance program.
But that's not.
So
this
that's
isn't a
no,
matter
that's
of
not.
opinion.
That's a totally different thing. That the program is an insurance policy that you're paying into. Just because it's a universal program
My
doesn't
point
mean
is
that
we're
you're
not doing
that's
all
insurance.
this spending on the military only, and that the military gets. There's this myth that the military gets every dime out of your tax dollar, which is just categorically false.
No, they
That's
get
not a matter of
3/4.
opinion.
They get 3/4 of discretionary spending. Or
but
no,
of
like
the
50
Discretionary
something.
spending.
Tax
So the
dollars.
money you have left over when you're making choices about what to spend, not your average budget.
No,
Yeah.
because
Dime on
because
the
you
dollar
have
most
to
goes towards
understand
Social
that
Security.
because Social Security is an insurance program. It's completely separate and aside. That's the problem. Is the GOP has this viewpoint of like, oh, you know, that's your taxes. No, it's an insurance program that you're paying into to protect us against the fact that, you know, previously what was happening is people were getting old and they were poor as hell and they were dying.
Well, you do know that the Social Security isn't expected to be around by the time we retire, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and especially when it's
Yeah,
getting
especially when they
kneecapped by
shrink
the
it and shrink it the way
GOP
they
or
do.
Paul Ryan and all that.
Jeez, like it's doing a great job with.
You know,
Whatever
I get
happened to
maybe
personal
you should
responsibility,
ask your
401k, saving for retirement, putting yourself in a position
No,
where
you're
you
right.
can take care of yourself. Do you really want to be spoon-fed and build into this welfare state?
You must have been raised in some kind of bubble.
I was raised to
So-
work for myself.
A
I
lot
had my
of people
first job
don't
at
have enough
14.
money. They
I know.
live paycheck
Right.
to paycheck. They can't even begin to try to save.
That's a money bubble.
There
yeah.
are steps you could make to improve your situation.
Not always true.
Oh, really?
Get
That's
a loan.
a little
go
bit
to
of an
school.
ignorant
Get a
thing.
loan.
Oh,
so you can get more debt.
Or
That's a
let's just
great
sit
one.
here and do nothing and ask for handout and handout and just become completely dependent upon the state.
That's not what they're doing.
So wait. You're saying
Yeah,
that
the
Social
only thing that
Security is
answers
becoming
you must have been
completely
raised in the
dependent on
bubble.
the state?
It's crazy.
I'm getting
Social
from all
Security is
directions.
never. Social Security was never meant to be a primary source of income, but it was meant to be a support so that you would at least not
for
starve
people
to
who
death
need it.
or freeze to death.
That everybody should be craving for entitlements all the time.
Is
No,
that
you're
a
right.
business?
Rich people.
No, people aren't.
I think I've personally witnessed many families who have no intentions of ever getting a job and they live solely off of welfare checks. They're called welfare queens.
But
It's a
that
very
shouldn't
common
Yeah.
thing.
take it away from the people who do actually
Yeah,
need
and
it.
so
Just
Well, if
because
the
you know a
system is
few
broken,
families.
then we
More
can't just
people abuse
continue
it.
losing that money on because
So people-
the fear when this first became a thing in the United States, right? The big fear was that people would no longer have a reason to work, right? Why would people work if they were given money to live?
You-
And that fear came true.
So, okay, to that point, I would like to say that that's like comparing shoplifting to a store and saying that, well, people shoplift, so why should we even have stores to begin with?
No, I don't think
I
that's
think
How?
that's
How is
I
it
agree
different?
with
Wait,
that.
what?
How is
Yeah,
that different?
I know, that's not like
How,
that.
how in the world is that different? If you're saying that
It
they're
makes
welfare
no
queens
sense.
and they're
Explain.
taking it when they shouldn't be taking it, or that they're utilizing the system inappropriately, okay? And to me, you know, I guess I might be misunderstanding it. It sounds like you're almost equating it to theft in terms of taking money that wasn't supposed to be appropriated to them in the way that it was, and then saying, why should we even have this program? Why should we have this store if people are going to take advantage of it?
I think that the program needs to be regulated. I
The
never
program,
said the
what are you
program
talking?
should
They have regulated. Do you
Well,
think it's
then the
unregulated?
unregulated?
regulations
My
aren't
exact
working
It's
if
not
that's still
regulated enough,
happening.
evidently.
Because it keeps
Okay,
getting
but one thing.
handed
Okay,
back.
but one
More
thing is
regulation is
regulating
gonna
it
lead to
more
that.
and getting rid of it.
What was that?
There is one thing is regulating it more.
I never
which-
said we
There's
should
a
Maybe.
abolish
difference
social
between-
security programs.
No, but
I'm
your buddy
talking
here-
about how entitlement programs lead to an entitlement state.
I just
And
wonder
I'm sorry,
why.
but regards to okay, here's a hot button issue. Take Bernie Sanders and his well-intentioned, misguided supporters with the idea of healthcare. Healthcare. We all deserve healthcare.
When we're
It's
the
this idea-
only developed
Excuse me,
nation who
please.
doesn't give it,
Excuse
like
me.
how can
You
you not?
cannot compare the United States of America to
Can I
Denmark.
finish a single
like, that's
statement?
insane.
How about
Okay,
you,
how about
Canada?
You
How
cannot
about
compare
the-
the United States of America to Canada.
Oh, why not?
Because it's a
We spend
completely
way
different
more on
country.
healthcare.
It's a
Okay, but
completely
here's
different
my
country.
fundamental. Here's the point I'm trying to
Do
make
you not
about
understand that?
government entitlement programs. You get some. Let's say we switch to this La La Land where everybody gets universal health care, but then we have. It's not seeing the trees for the forest. let's think about this. This is the least productive Congress since the Civil War. Do we really want to hand our healthcare rights over to them to become another political football that can move back and forth? No, I'd rather spend $125 a month and get the coverage that I get.
Well, the deductible
But
is a little.
so many
yeah,
people
you have
can't even
$125
afford
a month.
anything.
I'm
Kinda
sorry,
shocked by
I
that.
think there are things you could do to improve your position in
People
life.
go into drastic
Okay.
debt or not solve health issues at all
I'd
because
rather-
they can
But
afford
here's the other
treatment.
thing.
I'd rather
If
pay
you
a
go
little
through the
bit more
Bernie
in
Sanders
taxes.
Medicaid for if you go that's a good point. You go through that Bernie Sanders Medicaid for all thing. It's supposed to provide health care for everybody, and the people that it seeks to help out the most, it's hurting more because you look at the increase. So the $50,000 a year people, you look at the increases that they're paying in taxes to provide for Medicaid for all is more than the insurance premiums that they are already paying
No.
if they have a
That's
job.
not
That's
true.
inaccurate.
No, that is
Okay,
one. This
so-
is
That
not
is
a matter
not
of
true.
opinion.
It
That
is.
is not
What
a
the-
matter of opinion.
So okay,
You're making
okay.
up numbers.
So okay, let's stop for a
I've read
second.
his- I've read his report.
Has
that
anybody
is unfounded.
checked whether his numbers are made up?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually. So I can tell you the
I pay for this myself.
40. So
So you and your
currently-
own
where do you
experience
get-
speaks to everybody else's life.
Can we get back on track?
So currently, right now,
So I
we're
think-
spending
Let's
$42
get
billion
back on track.
a year.
How can America? How can the United States of America? If you don't mind not interrupting me for a moment, okay? The question
Irony.
was, how can the United States of America stay on top? The question I would like to ask is, what do you consider the ideal United States of America? What would we have to be for everyone in this room to be happy? And then once we understand that, we need to figure out what are the paths we need to take to get there.
And I think I'm going to go back to the healthcare thing because, you know, as someone that has spent most of my life in a place where I see the lies that they tell on TV about the Canadian healthcare system in terms of wait times and access to doctors. Well, my grandfather was from the United States, and it took him 6 weeks every time he needed to see a specialist. I never had to wait that long.
So healthcare.
So healthcare, I
what
absolutely
else?
believe is a major factor in it. I believe reducing war spending and eliminating foreign policy in the Kissinger style, I think that'd be really beneficial. I think we'd save so much money that we could put towards infrastructure. Infrastructure is one area that this country is just absolutely falling apart. That and education.
Anybody
Yeah.
else have anything else to say?
Just personal accountability, both for us as individuals and as us as a nation. I think we need to come back to this idea that as a functioning adult, you have to hold yourself to a reasonable standard of responsibility. And if you want to consider yourself a nation state, then you have to hold yourself to a reasonable standard of responsibility for taking care of yourself.
Okay.
And not depending on good old Uncle Sam to come pull our ass out of the fire.
I
every
think
week.
you.
Yeah, but
I
it's
think
so-
you
but
make a
the
good
thing is that
hold
it's-
on.
But we're talking about our connection
Everybody's
with the
gonna
rest
be
of the
real
world.
surprised in a second. I'm disagreeing with Teddy.
Wait for it. What?
Dude, if we don't have
Yes,
each other,
yeah. It just. Okay. So, we're talking about welfare programs and whatever else. Now, do I think the average American can afford everything we're being asked? No. But I think that we need to focus on getting people jobs when they need them. Now, in that in-between time, if we actually had an economy that was sustainable, that would provide people with jobs, welfare is not an issue if people are only on it for a maximum of 6 months.
But that's not. The people are on it for a lot longer than that.
Well,
the idea.
we
That's the
talked
structure
about
of
we
the
talked
system
about
more than
we
anything.
talked about regulating it
I
and
said about
changing the way
regulation
that
and you
works.
freaked out.
But America is actually about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and once in a while, within reason, everybody should recognize that they can ask for help. I
There's a
start.
difference between giving a man a fish and teaching him how to fish.
I don't disagree with that, but there are certain things we don't need to kneecap.
I just
We don't need
wonder
to
why,
kneecap poor Americans.
I
That's
just
not a
wonder
thing.
why your focus is on the people who abuse welfare versus the people who don't. I just don't understand the mentality. I don't
No,
understand
that's
the mentality.
inaccurate.
That's what I'm
Three
saying.
quarters of it is women and children.
I don't
I said
understand.
substantial, not majority.
So
okay, but I don't
when-
understand the mentality that you would have to
Prioritize, yeah.
to make that your number one point about welfare versus the people that it's actually helping.
And I'm
I
shocked
know
that-
that there are welfare queens. I understand
A lot
that.
of them.
But- Okay,
But it's
there's a
unsurprising when
lot
they-
of people who it's actually helping, and there are people who need it. And I think that a lot of the viewpoint that you have is just hurtful because you're not thinking about individual people and you're not thinking about how they feel and what they do day to day and the struggles that they're facing. And so you're putting this blanket on that welfare is a bad thing because people are abusing it. There are a lot of people who need it. There are a lot of people who can't pay their hospital bills and have serious life-endangering problems.
Number one reason for bankruptcy in America is health.
And that goes back to the financial
necessarily
thing, you
the
We
know.
most
are
health-conscious
actually
people.
trying to redo our healthcare system. Thanks, Obamacare.
But no matter what
I never
system
talked
is in
about
place, it's going to
Obamacare.
get
I'm
abused by some group of people. There's never going to be, an objective.
So There's you gonna be should some set people yourself up robbing to banks. protect Should we stop having
That
police?
seems reasonable.
Should we consider our relationship with other countries if in regards to the actual question that we were given? I kind
I
of feel like
did. I
we're
said we
really
need to start
harping on
including
how to
ourselves.
fix ourselves, but what about on the major stage?
How
America
about
first.
letting them
That's
sort
simple.
themselves out?
America
I'm
first.
serious. We've got enough fucking problems. Why don't we just
So you don't
spend
think
some
that
time here?
we've become kind of like a new world order?
If we're the new world order, we need to reorganize because, honestly, we talk about welfare being a problem in America. The real problem with welfare is all of the countries that we are spoon feeding, that we are babying all over the world.
So you're saying we need to distance ourselves from everybody and restock the new world order?
I think that you're talking about China just recently emerged as a superpower. Okay, great. They don't need help. Israel, they don't need anywhere near as much help as we're giving them.
The question was, what do we do to stay on top and be the ultimate
That's surprising you say
superpower?
that.
And I said that we have to put our own priorities first. Then I was responded to as if that was irrelevant, as if that had nothing to do with what we're talking about, as if that is a crazy idea that if we want to maintain our spot as the number one superpower, we have to prioritize our own interests before we prioritize
The
foreign
thing that I had to
interests.
say in regards to that, though, is because we are more interconnected than ever, and some people might say we are already in the age of New World Order. China, for example, has been giving a lot of money and working a lot with South America and Central America for control. So that's a really good ally for them, right? If they become allies, they're going to get stronger and stronger and stronger because they're helping these countries. So
I still
we're going
don't
to
think
stay
that puts us in a
isolated and
position
small.
of
We're not going to have
vulnerability.
any allies because we don't want to get in their mess, and that will make us fall off the stage.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the
Wait,
thing is
hold
like
on,
even
yeah.
a bear
I
will
agree
die
with
by bee stings. You know, it just takes enough bees, and it's the same thing. You know, if we lose our standing with enough countries, I mean it's not hard for them to combine. You know, the EU has a higher GDP than us, and it's because they came together and they created a single economic system.
I think
Yeah,
we
and
need
is that
to
still
be,
true
We need to
post-Brexit?
be the ones who bring everybody together as much as we can. It's going to take a few generations, I think, to get there. But I think that we really need to start considering the fact that we are no longer separate.
I don't think
Yeah,
that
I agree.
it's realistic to think that that's America's job. We can't agree on anything.
It doesn't
in
have to
this-
be our job, but it probably should be if we want to stay on top power.
I do not
That's
think
what it
we're
is.
as
I disagree
vulnerable
with
as
that
everyone's
statement.
portraying. I don't think we're as vulnerable as everyone's saying. I mean,
It's not
allies
vulnerability.
going towards America or China is it's a drop in the ocean when you compare it to American might. Everyone knows it would be ruined.
But you can't
But-
rule everything with just like a big voice and a big stick.
We're
not
not
History
looking
begs
to
to
You
differ.
can't
do
do that.
We're
all
not
about
looking
begs
to
to
rule.
differ.
We're looking to take care of ourselves while we
Selves.
sort our shit
So
out.
okay, I got a question for you guys then.
How do you expect
how-
Americans to be this shining beacon on a hill for everyone all the time when we're so immensely divided at home? How can we get people to agree on anything when we can't agree
I think
with
that's
each
a really
other?
good point. You know what that probably means? We're probably not going to be the world power for much longer.
So okay, wait.
I don't
I
believe
got a question for you. So how if we do this whole America First thing and we bring all this stuff back to the U.S. and try to do all our own manufacturing and stuff, how do you see the current labor costs affecting that? Because you know you look at how much people are getting paid across the globe to produce our materials, and then you have people in this country who may even the lowest minimum wage is considerably more. How do you
That's why I like
reconcile
Donald.
that?
That's one of the reasons I like Donald, because he's creating a sort of competition by this corporate tax break. He's saying he's encouraging people
So-
to come back here so they can afford to upkeep these
You
wages.
think
And
Americans are going to
99
take iPhones?
99%
All
of
going to be
Never
offset by the
happened.
fact that we're employing more
But
people.
more cars.
So 99% of those tax
No.
breaks
No.
were not used for raising wages.
They went
I'm
into the pockets.
sorry, but it's what
You're
is-
sorry that money went right to the investors and to buying back stock?
It's a little
That's
idealistic.
kinda-
Yeah. I mean, 99%. You know, they did, who was that, asked, I think it was Muchin or whatever, he asked a bunch of CEOs, he said, raise your hand if you're going to increase wages for your employees. 2-3 hands went up in the whole crowd. Because that's not how they do it. That's not what the structure of a corporation is.
That's a very nice anecdote.
So that's the whole reason is that it's impossible
It's
to
an
think that
anecdote.
your tax it just says your tax break thing is an antidote. I mean, come on. It's him asking a direct question to people about what they would do with it, and now we have the proof that they didn't lie to him. They told him the truth that 99% ended up going to stock buybacks and other like R&D stuff, but not going to
R&D?
the
R&D
wages.
is employing people.
Yeah,
If
and
you're spending
more money,
R&D is
certainly,
actually
that's-
one of
No, not when
we
you're
talked
doing
about
it with
innovation.
machines. Yeah,
America
that's the
There has
honest
to-
truth. Is
there has
that-
to be people that are recording what the
And-
findings of machines.
And I think if we really push for a universal income and take charge of automation,
Should
we
because
all
also
go
automation.
house to house
Real
and
world.
make sure everybody's got the crumbs
Is
off their
anybody
mouth?
talking about AI? Because that's a huge
No, that's what I was
component
just
of the
talking
future.
about. Yeah.
Like, you want to talk about people losing their jobs and the economy completely suffering? Is this humorous to you? Because do you understand? Have you been
Yes,
looking into
absolutely. Keep talking.
It? No, I
Keep
want to
talking.
know why you're being so exaggerated.
Because you're very aggressive right now.
You're very frustrating.
Okay, I would like to know why.
No, I don't want to tell you. Just
You don't want to
keep
tell
telling.
me? Well, okay.
Let's stay on topic.
Yeah,
So-
that's your topic.
The-
Yeah,
let's-
same topic.
The AI thing is something that we really need to consider, right? We see big billboards everywhere saying that we're all going to lose our jobs in 20 years because of AI. So if we don't have something like universal income,
They
how are
just tried
people going
universal
to have...
income and they walked it back in Europe. What was it? Sweden or who was it?
I think it was Norway.
Norway.
Yeah, because it's not there yet. I mean,
Which is why we're suggesting
they
it here.
already have
I was
a
listening or-
very socialized system there, so it doesn't really help out a place that doesn't have extreme income inequality to begin with, and also like we have considerably more jobs that are oriented in transit and stuff like that. So I mean, again, back to that size of country thing. How long does it take you to drive a truck all the way up and down? I mean, here it's a lot longer. So trucks, I don't know if you know this or not, but automation, all trucks are going to be self-driving within 10 years. Absolutely.
Look-
and how many
look-
of those people lose their jobs? Same thing with warehouses.
Yeah.
So you take out that whole population
Sorry.
and they're not, what are they going to do? They don't have a job now because that's all they know. Look at coal. I mean, it's going to be the same
You have
thing
a
that happened
spur-
with those
you have
people
a
that aren't
personal
willing to
responsibility
re-educate.
to make sure that you have a skill that can be utilized in society. That's why I'm going to law school. That's why we're getting PhDs.
But not everybody has that opportunity.
I think it's not as hard as you think to get opportunities to better your
Without putting
situation.
yourself into massive debt, sure.
I'm
I mean,
arguing
maybe
for
you
the
shouldn't get a
creation
loan
of
to go to
jobs
liberal
so that
arts
people
school.
have
And sometimes you
opportunities.
can't get a loan
what,
at all.
What is degrading about saying that
What jobs are
we
you
create
going to create?
jobs?
Well, tell us what jobs you're going to create once AI comes into the picture.
Somebody's
Dude,
gotta take care of
saying
these robots.
that we're gonna lose our jobs to IA is it's like
AI.
AI is when people were afraid of the milkman not being around anymore because now we can, put our milk in the fridge.
So you're not concerned at all about artificial
Absolutely,
intelligence?
absolutely not. We will replace those
Ah,
jobs by
okay.
other jobs. People who will create the robots, people who will create the computing systems.
Robots are going to
yeah,
We
create
but
don't have
there's
this.
economies
We
of
don't
scale.
have the same
But
job.
who
We don't
makes
have the
those
same
robots?
jobs that we had 100 years ago.
and we're
I'm
never
sorry,
going
but we're
to,
going to have
and
to
we
agree to
have
disagree
to
on this one because I think it's kind of humorous that you don't think AI is going to have any effect on our economy.
Of course, it will have an effect on our economy,
then.
but we will
Social
have different
Darwinism.
jobs than we
No,
have
but
now.
but it's a
what?
scale of things.
Like
so
what?
okay, back to my coal thing. You look at coal, and 100 years ago, how many people it took to mine, a ton of ore or whatever it is. It's scaled down by like 80%. So like what used to take 80 people to do a job now can do it with 2 because of automation and the scale of truck and everything like that. So much of that process has now been automated, and that's like the prime example of where those jobs are going to be lost. And you look at that, I mean, coal country is hurting and it's not coming back. And you know, I agree, like in terms of
Take some personal
re-educating,
responsibility.
you know,
Pick up another
Would you
trade.
stop
But
saying
not
that?
everyone has to go to college.
Stop
I'm sorry,
saying
it's an
that.
issue. I'm
So,
an
okay,
adult. I
okay.
believe in
But
that.
If
that's
you-
so like white privilege of you to say. It's like embarrassing.
I'm not saying
It's
everyone should
embarrassing.
go to Harvard. I'm not saying everyone should go
Super.
to Harvard, but I'm saying maybe you should go to a trade school, learn to be a mechanic, so you know how to take care
But
of
what if
it.
your mom? What if your mom was a
Community
crackhead and your dad wasn't around, and you went to a school that couldn't afford to give you books or paper, and you don't even know how to read by no fault of your own by the time you're in 7th grade? How is that person ever going to go to college?
I think that's
My
a
question
on.
right here.
hypothetical
My
that's so
question
specific.
right here, young man, is how did we get from superpowers? How we got on top of one superpower, the next, from America topping China? How did we get that to AI?
Krista.
Oh, because we're talking.
Well, Krista, tell us, please. How did we get
we're,
there?
we're
I
talking
listen
about
to
how
a lot of
Please, settle.
Why do I think because I've been I like Elon Musk. I think he's an amazing person. And I also like Joe Rogan. And I happened to listen to a podcast of them the other day.
That was a good one.
And
How are those factories doing?
I've been listening a lot to
I want the
AI.
exact details of how we got there. From
Oh, okay, because we're talking about how
what
will
were the conversations that enabled you to start bringing up AI?
Creation of jobs.
Well, first we were focusing, I think, too much on how America should get better, which I think is too self-centered for the question that was given. So I tried to direct everyone to the world stage, and once we got to the world stage, we became separated as to whether or not that was even our responsibility. And then I had to remind everyone that we are already interconnected, so of course it's our responsibility, because in many ways we're one and the same. And then you have to realize that if we're talking about staying, i.e. in the future, the biggest thing that we need to worry about, whether or not you think it's real, is AI. We can't deny something like that. And AI is going to change the world as we know it in ways that we can't even pretend to imagine. And you have to consider it for any sort of future theory. Period.
Now, Mr. Delgado, let's stay on topic here. You seem very frustrated with this AI business. Now, how are you thinking AI will improve in the future?
I am frustrated with fear.
Yeah.
And so, I think people have been struggling this for a long, long time. You know, when cars first appear, people were just up in arms. Oh my gosh, we're not gonna be able to walk on the streets. There's cars on the streets. What are we gonna do?
Netflix and
now,
Blockbuster.
do me this if you will.
And so
Do me this if you will.
Comparing a car to AI.
No.
it was
That's
Now, Mr. H.
Yes.
Imagine you were reading a book and it had a table of contents.
Mm-hmm.
How did we arrive from
Okay.
China,
Yes.
Travel
Being-
one.
surpassed by the United States still,
Mm-hmm.
and getting to AI?
Okay, so we started a conversation where we talked about what America's path forward in the world was. We were talking about our status as a superpower and whether we think we're going to be able to maintain it. Certain people present didn't think we were going to be able to maintain it, and we bounced back and forth between infrastructure and social security. We went through lots and lots of things, but eventually we got down to my opinion that the driving force of an economy is jobs. And as soon as we got to looking at a solution for America that involved creating more jobs, she brought up the specter of AI and robotics replacing American workers.
Would you consider this fair? And
Definitely.
a nice index explaining how we got there.
Yes.
Now, what I need to know, Miss Coleman, your thoughts of how we got exactly to AI.
I think that it was just because we were talking about how to stay on top, and AI is the next innovation that is coming up. It's what we're leading to. And so talking about jobs and that's where our jobs are going to go, That's how we got to AI, is that we're trying to stay on top as a country, and that's the next thing that America is headed to.
And you think the U.S. is on top of its game as far as AI?
I think that there are other countries that are doing it as well, and I think it's kind of like a race to who's going to do it better.
Interesting. Now, as we saw, now, sorry, once again, Mr. Parker. I'm sorry, Mr. Parker. So sorry.
Mr.
Right? One day, why
look
did you
like a
react the way you did? Why did Mr. Delgado react the way he did with regards to the AI? Why do you think that?
It could be hard to entertain hypotheticals.
And the entire conversation as a whole.
I think in regards specifically to the AI, I think it could be hard to respond to hypotheticals that are so far out that it's still hard to wrap your mind around what might be happening in 10 or 20 years. I think people got a little visceral when I was trying to stay on the subject of how do we... The question, how does America stay on top of China, is so broad. You know, there's a lot of intricate, separate issues that make up how do we stay on top. But as soon as I mentioned this idea that apparently is a bad word now, that we all have to hold ourselves responsible, that apparently offended a fair number of people in this room.
He seemed to get quite offended when you mentioned that. And can you really
Pardon me, not
elaborate?
offended, but just really, it's just almost pathetically hilarious.
Why is it pathetically hilarious? Please, elaborate.
Yeah, but I'm not the Civil War.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, can you say that loud?
Yes, and I'm the one who's not being civil.
Wait, did I offend you?
Of course.
I
I was
mean, you just
offended, maybe
called
talking
me
about your intellect, maybe.
That's kind of not exactly
Well,
befitting the behavior of a PhD candidate.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry. I
Name
apologize.
calling versus policy debate.
All right, let's
Maybe
get back to
one-
let's
Y'all
get back
are
to
so
let's get back to the
sensitive.
conversation. Yeah, you're all super
Wait,
sensitive.
wait.
Where's your safe
Hold on.
space?
You're talking about the people down here as though we're overly sensitive. But again, the
I
only
can say
time
I'm sensitive,
I made,
but y'all are
yeah,
sensitive.
The only time I made any comments of a
Please, one
personal
at a time,
nature,
settle.
the only time I made any comments of a personal nature, I was asked.
Mr. Delgado, do you think you're being uncivil?
I was asked.
Mr. Delgado, do you think you're being uncivil?
No, I do not.
Really?
I guess it's
I-
free reign to question everybody's intelligence in this room.
Everyone else,
Yes.
you think Mr. Delgado is being uncivil?
No.
I don't
Certainly
think
not.
pathetic is a word I would use to
Raise your
describe
hand
anybody in the
if
room.
you do. So,
Great.
I have a
Great.
majority, Mr.
Alright.
Delgado.
Let me defend myself.
Let you defend yourself.
Absolutely, I don't think
Please.
ad hominem attacks have any place in a
Thank you.
discussion.
Thank you.
Please,
Litigating
defend yourself,
this
Mr.
argument.
Delgado.
This is why I think it's not offensive. These two gentlemen are PhD candidates.
And
I-
so are you.
Yes, I hold much higher standards for their arguments than the ones that they have presented today. And as far as for this entire side of the classroom today, I think they have all presented very short-sighted views on how America will stay first, which, to begin with, I don't think
However,
United
you
States-
do not participate as much either.
No, I did not, because I was trying to understand really where they were going, and
Don't
the
you
more
think
and more they talked, the more I just couldn't understand where they were going and how much of a tunnel vision they had throughout their entire conversation. It was like, oh, we need to
is
do
a
this,
bad
we need to do
proposal worse than no proposal?
this. Depends. Sometimes it's better to just wait and observe and listen.
Don't you think
In
that
this-
would have
in
been
this
a better way to
case-
phrase that than
Let
just
Mr.
going
Delgado
straight
finish.
to my lack of intelligence? That's hilarious.
Mr. Delgado, walk us through your table of contents.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, to begin with, I don't think the United States is the top nation in the world. I think we have enough.
No. We need to walk us through the table of contents on this conversation. How did we get from China to AI?
And that's what I'm doing.
Really?
Yes. Do you want to hear?
Continue.
All right. Great. So to begin with, I don't think the United States is at the top. I think we have a number of studies around the world that show that the standard of living in the United States has, in comparison to many other countries, lacked tremendously. I think that we have been fed a lie throughout generations that might have been true at one point. Maybe at one point we were the top nation, but we're certainly not anymore. And certainly not in ways that affect our lives directly. And second, I think that one of the ways in which any nation makes any progress compared to their neighbors and compared to the rest of the world is by the amount of jobs that they're able to provide, right, for their citizens. Right now we have a huge increase of minimum wage jobs constantly happening, and so we're constantly just focused on the number of jobs that we're providing rather than the quality of jobs that we're providing. And when we are so focused on AI stealing our jobs and being afraid that it's going to revolutionize everything and somehow we're not going to have people working this, people working that, I think that's part of that short side, you know.
So do you
where-
think that AI will be getting all the quality jobs?
No, I think that AI will be getting the type of jobs that we don't want to keep doing anyway.
No, it's gonna be everywhere.
Maybe.
I mean, it's in like, I mean, you know, people still want to be doctors. There's a lot of doctors that are getting replaced. Same with pharmacy. I mean, it's all
Well,
over.
thank you, Mr. Delgato, for your input on your table of contents.
Yes, but-
I would like to hear from Mr. Coate now.
Okay,
Your
I
table
guess
of contents, please.
we started out talking about how we can improve nationally on a national level, and then Krista kind of redirected us towards the larger scale of the entire world, and discussed interconnectivity, and you know, it seemed that Teddy and Andy they tended to disagree in terms of the course of action to take. They have kind of an isolationist view, and I kind of agree with Krista in the sense that we're so interconnected at this point that it'll be damning for us to transition away. You know, looking at what's happening with Brexit, I think that's a prime example of what happens when you pull for an isolationist mentality. But then we start, and I'm a little upset that I didn't get credit for the AI, the automation, because I'm the one that brought it up to begin with.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can take
So,
it.
I think
no,
your
but
table
my
of contents should be quite nice then.
yeah, no. So my point with that was that, you know, so many of these jobs are going, and it's important, if we're to stay on top, that we have an action plan. If we're first actors on this, that's what's going to keep us on top. Is that, you know, this is an inevitability. I don't think anyone in the world is saying that robotic infrastructure and things like that are going to go away. But if we focus on this country and being the first to action, that's what's going to make a difference for us. And, you know, a big part of that is there will be an attrition of jobs. And I do agree, there will be more gained in other areas. But as a whole, there is going to be substantial job loss across industry. I mean, coal, as I pointed out before, that's one that has already suffered substantially from automation. And it's going to happen more and more. And we need a protective system. You know, the reason that the Social Security was put in place is along the same lines as why we need an individual income to protect all the
Your
people.
table of contents is quite full. Thank you for sharing. Ms. Baker, yes, you've met this brand new class today.
I have.
You have engaged, and I thank you for engaging, young lady. Could you please expound upon your table of contents?
I mean, I don't think there's much more to be said that has already been said. As was noted by everyone else here, we started in comparing effects of China versus America as superpowers, what we could do internally and as well as externally in progressing as a nation and in aiding other nations, and whether that should be our priority right now. And then kind of directing back to internal factors for progression, I agree with what Mr. Delgado said in regards to the fact that we're not number one right now. We might have been at a time, but we've persisted in that belief even when it hasn't been true for quite a while. And, you know, we're at the point where these confounding variables are like he said, going to lead to job loss, specifically in regards to AI, and that's about how we got there.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, one thing that is very important, both out in the world and especially in this room, civility. Civility. How do we continue to keep that civility going and keep the communication open? How does one do that? In a classroom, in the world?
Well, I think primarily, you know, and this goes back to why I agreed with you guys, is that one of the largest problems that we have with discourse is ad hominem attacks and argument structure, and understanding a valid argument structure and utilizing that to prove a point.
Ms. Coleman.
I don't think that saying something's pathetically hilarious is uncivil.
I'll keep that in mind the next time I hear you say something.
Okay, I mean, I'm just saying I don't. I think that as bad as that
Civil?
is,
Civil?
I think that as bad as that is, I think the amount of interruption that happens and not listening is uncivil as well. I would say that that's the same thing, but everybody jumped on him for it. But y'all are able to do that.
Everybody
What
was
am I doing?
interrupting
Single
everybody,
personal
and
attack.
somehow the
Civil,
consequences are
civil.
You
Some
asked
have-
the question.
Excuse me.
Is it civil
Some
to
Get
know?
mad when people respond.
Listen, settle. This is civility. We need to have it. That we just come together and just don't hear about anybody anymore. What happens is we just keep butting heads and the message never comes across, whether it's good or bad. It's civility, not the Civil War. Ms. Krista.
I think we just need to remember that we all come from a place of passion and from a lot of emotion. And so I think we also have to be understanding of that.
Which is all well and good. But when that passion overflows and bubbles, we become that frog that suddenly dies in the boiling water. Am I not correct?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, raising his hand.
So, what I'd like to do at this point is go around the room in just one moment, and you'll get your chance to speak, Mr.
Just in
Delgato.
case somebody else jumps in.
But Mr. Delgato, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah.
Just to clarify one more time, if you want to believe that I was uncivil, first of all, I'm not hurt by it. Second, that's your choice. And third, whatever. No, fourth, no. Third is that I was not attacking his character. I was attacking the content of his argument, which I thought was, again, pathetically hilarious.
I'll leave that for the moment.
So when I'm not attacking when I'm
I
not
believe
attacking
that-
the character, I think that by now, as a student of the caliber
Understandable.
that we are, you should be able to not take comments personally. When I'm not like making fun of you in that regard.
No one
But
can
I-
make
But if I'm making fun of
no
you
one
in
can
an
make
argument,
anyone do anything. But
I think
let's
use of
move
the
on,
word
move on.
attack is a bigger issue here because
Yes,
in having any sort of discourse surrounding policy, you don't want to be, even if it's attacking an argument and not a character, you shouldn't be approaching it via attacking someone.
And this is an
Yes,
academic
Ms.
setting.
Baker. Yes. Thank you so much. What I'd like to do at this moment is I would like to ask each individual in this room, number one, what they would want to learn, not only from this class, but from each individual, even if they don't agree with them. What do you expect to learn? And how, if you disagree with this person, how do you remedy that disagreement? Yes, Mr. H.
Okay. Things I would like to learn in this class. It's not often that you're locked in a box with people you disagree with. I have critiques for my own party and the way they govern. But something that I think has been universally, or almost universally true of the Grand Old Party is the ability to put personal differences aside to actually progress an agenda. And I'm hoping to learn from this circumstance why that isn't given value.
Very good. Ms. Coleman.
I made a recent switch to being a history major, and I would just like to learn from all of you that are very intelligent and well versed on the subject, different policies and history, and I just like to learn about history from everyone. Yeah, we definitely disagree on a lot of things, but I would just like to learn your different points of view.
Mr. Cook.
You know, I mean, I guess I was kind of taken back by the books that we were going to be reading, and you know, I'm really interested to see how we're able to pull the parallels from Catherine to the current administration as a whole. That's what I'd really like to get out of this class. I'd really like to learn more about the belief in individual freedom and how that compares, you know, with these guys up front in terms of moral obligation. And I'd like to, you know, in terms of the conflict remedy, I think having open discussions, avoiding ad hominem attacks, avoiding trying to talk over each other, and not hyperbolizing. I think if we can utilize those techniques, that'll really help us come together and have discourse that actually moves all of us forward.
Very good. Krista.
I think that a person's perception of the world is limited by their experiences.
What about the individuals?
I think that they all have their own experiences that have led them to their particular viewpoint.
How's that going to affect you?
How's that going to affect me?
Yes.
I think that because I feel like I understand their perspectives. And I can also, in that way, I think I can see what's lacking.
Very good. So,
Well, what do I want to learn from the
not only from the class, but from the individual students.
specifically with this class? I have an interest in history because it's interesting to see how individuals' actions shape the world that they live in and the world around them. And that's just always been an extreme interest and passion of mine. What I'd like to learn from my classmates is why in an institution for higher learning that's supposed to introduce new ideas, why is it that as soon as one of these new ideas disagree with your idea of the world, just one iota, why is it instantly swept under the rug? Why is it instantly scoffed at? Why is it instantly just disregarded? Because it's not perfectly in line with everyone else at this liberal school. I'm sorry, this is an institution for higher learning, and you have to have your own ideas challenged in order for them to
Understandable.
pursue them.
Thank you for sharing. Mr. Delgato.
Well, I have an extreme passion for history. I have an extreme passion for knowledge and for challenge. You know what I hope to get the most out of this class and from my classmates is to be challenged by them. I think that each one of them has specific qualities that I will have to deal with and I will have to learn from. Miss Baker, she has a specific view of the world that is very interesting. She has a lot of sensitivity about it. And I think she can bring a lot to the table that when we get into this very heated, passionate debates, gets left out. but it's also very relevant. John back here, he possesses an enormous amount of information as well that becomes very controversial, and it's very interesting to find out how we differ. Although we count with we do have a similar perspective on most things.
Plus he's
how we
behind
differ.
you.
Right, of course, yeah.
Class is almost over. How about Miss Baker? Thank you.
Primarily, one of the things that I would like to learn is, I think what's lacking most is how to properly engage in these discussions, like Ted mentioned, in a way that actually allows us to move forward and consider opinions other than our own and weight them against each other in a way that is not attacking other people's opinions or attacking people themselves for what they believe, but conversely examining specific policy issues and comparing them for what they are and not the emotional or personal factors driving them.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for another vibrant and intellectual class filled with stimulation. I hope everyone has a wonderful Valentine's Day. Please enjoy yourselves, and thank you again for class. I'll see you next time. Thank you.